I gripped my wine glass tighter as my mother-in-law's shrill laughter echoed across the dining room. Another family dinner, another opportunity for them to tear down everything I've built. The crystal stemware trembled slightly in my hand, threatening to spill the expensive Cabernet I'd brought to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. An online business? Josephine's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. Darling, when are you going to get a real job? Something respectable like what Marvin does? My name is Alexa, and I've spent the last 5 years listening to these people diminish my dreams while I quietly built an empire right under their noses. Mom's right, honey. Marvin's condescending smile made my stomach turn. Playing shop on the internet isn't exactly securing our future. Maybe it's time to consider that position Janet mentioned at her firm. I forced a smile, the same one I'd perfected over years of these gatherings. The business is doing fine, actually. We just signed our 10,000th customer last week. 10,000 people buying $5 trinkets? Josephine snorted, cutting into her overcooked roast. That's hardly something to brag about. Speaking of real business, Marvin interrupted, straightening his tie. We just closed a major deal at Crawford Corp. The board's talking about a promotion. I watched them beam at each other, their shared delusion of superiority almost comical. If they only knew about the meetings I'd been having with Silicon Valley's top venture capitalists, or the IPO paperwork sitting in my private office safe. More wine, Alexa? Maria, my best friend and tonight's saving grace, appeared at my elbow with a fresh bottle. She was the only one who knew the truth about my company's success. Please. I held out my glass, catching her knowing smirk. Tell us more about this promotion, darling, Josephine cooed at Marvin. Will you finally be able to buy that summer house we talked about? I bit back a laugh. The summer house they'd been dreaming about cost roughly what my company made in a single day now. But they'd never bothered to ask about my actual numbers, too busy assuming I was playing at business while Marvin climbed his precious corporate ladder. We should know by next quarter, Marvin replied, loosening his collar, though the market's been a bit unstable lately. Maria caught my eye. We both knew why Crawford Corp was struggling. Their outdated business model was bleeding customers to innovative online platforms like mine. Alexa, dear. Josephine leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake concern. You know we only want what's best for you. This little hobby of yours was cute at first, but don't you think it's time to grow up? The room fell silent. Even Marvin looked uncomfortable, though he made no move to defend me. I set down my wine glass, the soft clink against the table masking the sound of my last thread of patience snapping. You're right, Josephine, I said quietly. It is time to grow up. Oh, thank goodness you're finally seeing reason. She clasped her hands together in victory. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. I met her gaze steadily. About the future. About what it means to build something real. Maria shifted beside me, recognizing the steel in my voice. She'd been there through every late night, every setback, every triumph they'd dismissed. She knew what was coming. That's wonderful news, Marvin chimed in, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled back before he could touch me. Yes, it is. I stood up, smoothing my dress. I think it's time for some changes around here. Big changes. What do you mean? Josephine's smile faltered slightly. You'll see. I picked up my purse, nodding to Maria. Thank you for dinner. I have an early meeting tomorrow with my investment team. Investment team? Marvin laughed. For your little website? I paused at the dining room doorway, turning back to face them one last time. You know what the funny thing is? You've both been so busy looking down on me, you never bothered to look up my company's actual value. Their confused expressions were priceless. As I walked out to my car, I could hear Josephine's voice floating through the open window. What on earth is she talking about? I smiled, pulling out my phone to check my emails. The IPO paperwork was ready for my signature, and my team had just confirmed our company's current valuation. Tomorrow, everyone would know exactly what I'd been building while they laughed. But tonight, I had revenge to plan. You should have seen their faces, Maria laughed, handing me a coffee as we sat in my private office the next morning. I thought Josephine was going to choke on her wine when you mentioned the investment team. I took a sip, savoring both the premium roast and the memory. 5 years of condescension and mockery. 5 years of, when are you getting a real job? while I was building this. I gestured around my sleek corner office, 40 stories above Silicon Valley. Remember when you started? Maria perched on my desk, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Working from your tiny apartment, using that rickety card table as a desk? God, those were the days. I smiled, remembering the determination that drove me. Remember when the website crashed during our first big sale? You didn't sleep for 3 days straight. Maria showed me a photo from that time. Me, surrounded by empty energy drink cans, coding frantically on my laptop. But you fixed it yourself, saved thousands in developer fees. My phone buzzed. Another email from the IPO team. Speaking of saving money, I said, pulling up the secure documents. Wait until you see these numbers. Maria's eyes widened as she scanned the valuation report. Holy shit, Alexa, you're going to be worth more than Marvin's entire company. I finished for her. That's just the beginning. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jenny, my assistant, poked her head in. Your 10 a.m. is here, and there's something else you should see. She handed me a tablet open to a financial news site. The headline made my heart race. Crawford Corp stocks plummet amid mismanagement concerns. Isn't that? Maria started. Marvin's company? Yes. I scrolled through the article, my hands shaking slightly. Looks like someone's been cooking the books to hide their losses. The timing couldn't be better, Maria said quietly. Your IPO announcement will hit just as they're scrambling to explain this mess. I set down the tablet, memories flooding back. Marvin laughing at my business plan. Josephine telling everyone at their country club that her daughter-in-law was going through a phase. The countless dinner parties where I sat silently while they bragged about Marvin's corporate success. Send in my 10 a.m., I told Jenny, and get me everything you can find on Crawford Corp's current stock prices and major shareholders. As Jenny left, Maria grabbed my arm. What are you planning? Remember what you taught me when we were starting out? I asked, straightening my blazer. Always look for opportunities in chaos. Alexa, Maria's voice held a warning note. Don't let revenge cloud your judgment. You've worked too hard to risk it all now. I'm not risking anything. I pulled up my banking app, checking the private accounts I'd been building for years. I'm simply preparing to make a strategic investment in an undervalued company. My 10 a.m. turned out to be perfect timing, a senior partner from one of Silicon Valley's top venture capital firms. As we discussed final IPO details, my phone kept buzzing with updates about Crawford Corp's falling stock price. After the meeting, Maria cornered me again. I did some digging during your meeting. Want to know what I found? She pulled out her laptop, showing me internal documents from Crawford Corp. How did you get these? I asked, impressed. Let's just say Marvin's assistant isn't as loyal as he thinks. Maria pointed to several highlighted sections. Look at these projections. They've been lying to their shareholders for months. When this goes public, their stock will be worthless, I finished, a plan forming in my mind. And the company will be vulnerable to a takeover. Exactly. Maria closed her laptop, fixing me with a serious look. But Alexa, are you sure you want to go down this road? Taking over your husband's company. It's not just business anymore. This is personal. I walked to the window, looking out over the city I'd conquered one digital transaction at a time. It became personal the moment they decided to treat me like a joke. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marvin. Dinner tonight? Mom wants to apologize for yesterday. I showed the message to Maria, who rolled her eyes. Now they want to apologize? Let me guess, he's heard rumors about your IPO? Probably. I typed a quick reply, accepting the dinner invitation. But tonight's dinner is going to be very different from last night's. What are you going to do? I opened my safe, pulling out a folder of carefully gathered documents. I'm going to give them exactly what they always wanted. Proof that I can run a real business. Maria's eyes widened as she realized what I was planning. Oh my God, you're going to buy out Crawford Corp? I smiled, checking my lipstick in the reflection of my awards wall. That's just the beginning of what I'm going to do. The ink was still wet on the IPO paperwork when my phone lit up with Marvin's call. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Hey honey, running late for dinner? I asked, watching the sun set over the city from my office. Listen, slight change of plans, Marvin said, his voice tight with stress. Can we do dinner at home instead of the restaurant? Mom's not feeling well. Translation: Crawford Corp's stock had dropped another 15% today, and Josephine couldn't face the country club crowd. Of course, I replied sweetly. I'll pick up some wine on the way home. As I hung up, Maria burst into my office waving her tablet. You're not going to believe this. Someone leaked Crawford's real numbers to the press. I scanned the breaking news article, my heart racing. The company's losses were even worse than we'd thought. Any idea who leaked it? Maria's grin was downright wicked. Let's just say Marvin's assistant was very grateful for that job offer at your company's new corporate division. The division that doesn't exist yet, I reminded her, gathering my things. But will, once you acquire Crawford. Maria handed me a folder. By the way, your investment team confirmed it. You have enough liquid assets to buy a controlling interest when their stock bottoms out tomorrow. I slipped the folder into my briefcase, checking my appearance one last time. Perfect timing for tonight's dinner. Are you really going through with this? Maria asked, following me to the elevator. Watch the news tomorrow morning, I winked, stepping inside. And keep your phone on. At home, I found Marvin and Josephine huddled over laptops in the living room. They snapped them shut as soon as I walked in. Alexa, darling, Josephine's attempt at warmth couldn't hide her frazzled appearance. I hope you don't mind the change of plans. I've been feeling rather delicate today. I brought wine. I held up the bottle, a $500 Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. Thought we could all use something nice. Marvin's eyes narrowed at the label. That's expensive. Since when do you buy wines like that? Oh, I've had some good news at work. I moved to the kitchen, hiding my smile as I heard them whispering behind me. Speaking of work, Marvin followed me, his voice unusually hesitant. I heard some interesting rumors today. About your company? I poured 3 glasses, taking my time. Really? What kind of rumors? Something about major investors? An IPO? He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the tension. Why didn't you tell me? The same reason you haven't told me about Crawford's real financial situation, I replied calmly, meeting his eyes. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? Dinner's getting cold. Josephine called from the dining room, her voice sharp with anxiety. We sat down to the catered meal I'd ordered. No way was I cooking tonight. Josephine picked at her food, shooting nervous glances between Marvin and me. So, she finally broke the silence. Alexa, about yesterday. We may have been a bit harsh about your business ventures. May have been? I took a slow sip of wine. What your mother means, Marvin cut in, is that we should have shown more support. And now that we understand the scale of your success, now that you think I might be useful to you, I corrected him, now that Crawford Corp is in free fall and you're desperate for investors. The silence was deafening. Josephine's fork clattered against her plate. How did you, Marvin started, know about Crawford? I pulled out my phone, showing them the news article. It's amazing what people will tell you when they think you're just playing at business. This is absurd, Josephine sputtered. Marvin, tell her she's mistaken about Crawford. Instead, Marvin leaned forward, his expression calculating. Actually, if you're interested in investing, we should talk. With your company's backing. Oh, we'll talk. I stood up, unable to maintain the charade any longer. Tomorrow, in fact, I have a meeting with Crawford's board of directors at 9 a.m. What? They said in unison. I'm their mystery investor, I announced, savoring every word, the one who's been quietly buying up shares all week. Marvin's face went from pale to red. That's impossible. You couldn't afford... Actually, I pulled the folder from my briefcase, sliding it across the table. I can afford to buy controlling interest in Crawford Corp twice over. These are the official numbers from my IPO filing. Feel free to verify them. As they frantically flipped through the documents, I gathered my things. I should get some rest. Big day tomorrow, presenting my restructuring plan to the board. Restructuring? Josephine's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. I paused at the dining room door. Starting with the executive team. Sleep well. The last thing I heard as I climbed the stairs was Marvin's strangled voice. Mom, she's going to take my company. The morning news was already running stories about my IPO when Marvin knocked on my home office door. I'd spent the night there, preparing for the board meeting. Honey, his voice had that fake sweetness I'd grown to despise. Can we talk? I opened the door to find him in his best suit, hair perfectly styled. About what, Marvin? Your company's collapse or my successful little hobby? Look, I know I've been unsupportive. He stepped in, eyes darting to the financial reports spread across my desk. But we're married. We're supposed to be a team. Maybe we could work together on this? A team? I laughed, pointing to my laptop screen showing Crawford's true financial statements. Like how you've been such a team player hiding these losses? That's complicated business strategy. He loosened his tie nervously. But with your company's resources, we could turn things around. Together. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Urgent, check your email, now. Excuse me, I said, opening my inbox. The subject line made my blood run cold. Confidential, planned smear campaign against rising tech CEO. What's wrong? Marvin asked, noticing my expression change. Bad news? I scanned the email quickly. Screenshots of messages between Marvin and his PR team, planning to leak false information about my company right before the IPO. Nothing important, I lied, forwarding everything to my lawyers. Just last-minute details for the board meeting. About that meeting, Marvin perched on the edge of my desk, trying to look casual. I've been thinking, maybe we should delay it. Give us time to discuss this as a family. My phone buzzed again. Maria, he's trying to buy time to launch the smear campaign. Don't let him. Actually, I stood up, gathering my papers. The meeting has been moved up. I need to go. What? But Marvin followed me downstairs, where I found Josephine waiting in our living room. Alexa, darling. She rushed forward, arms open. I've been telling all my friends about your amazing success. We're so proud. Really? I stepped back from her attempted embrace. Yesterday, I was playing shop on the internet. Today, you're proud? Oh, sweetheart, you know I didn't mean... Save it. I checked my watch. I have a board to meet. Wait, Marvin grabbed my arm. You can't do this. Think about what people will say. A wife taking over her husband's company? I yanked my arm free. You should have thought about that before planning your little PR attack. His face went white. How did you... Next time you plot to destroy someone's reputation, make sure their best friend hasn't hired half your staff. I opened the front door, then turned back. Oh, and Marvin, I'd start packing up your office. The Crawford Corp boardroom fell silent as I walked in. 10 pairs of eyes watched me take my seat at the head of the table, exactly where Marvin usually sat. Gentlemen, I smiled, opening my laptop. Shall we begin? Mrs., one director started. Ms., I corrected him. And please, call me Alexa. We're going to be working very closely together. This is highly irregular, another director protested. Mr. Crawford should be here. Mr. Crawford is currently attempting to damage my company's reputation to save his own, I announced, projecting the leaked emails onto the screen behind me. Not exactly the behavior we want in a CEO, is it? Murmurs filled the room as they read the evidence. Now, I continued, pulling up my presentation, let's discuss how we're going to save this company from your current management's incompetence. My phone lit up with a call from Josephine. I declined it, only to receive an immediate text. Please don't do this to my son. I'm begging you. I thought about all the times she'd belittled me at family gatherings, all the snide remarks about my little website, all the ways she'd encouraged Marvin to dismiss my achievements. As you can see, I addressed the board, ignoring my phone's constant buzzing. My company's resources and innovative approach are exactly what Crawford Corp needs to survive in the digital age. 2 hours later, I emerged from the boardroom victorious. The vote had been unanimous. Marvin was out, and I was in. Maria was waiting in my office when I returned. Well, I collapsed into my chair, exhausted but triumphant. It's done. I'm the new CEO of Crawford Corp. And Marvin should be receiving the news right about... My phone chimed with a news alert. Now. Maria poured 2 glasses of champagne. To Karma? I raised my glass, but before I could respond, my office door burst open. Marvin stood there, face red with rage, waving his termination notice. You manipulative bitch, he snarled. You planned this all along. I took a calm sip of champagne. No, darling, you did this to yourself. I just saw an opportunity in chaos. Isn't that what real business people do? Security, Maria called through the intercom as Marvin advanced toward my desk. You can't do this to me, he growled, his perfectly pressed suit now wrinkled and disheveled. This company is my life. Was your life, I corrected him, standing my ground. until you drove it into the ground while mocking my success. Two security guards appeared in the doorway. Marvin spun around, his face contorting. You can't throw me out of my own building. Actually, I held up the board's resolution. It's my building now, and you're trespassing. This isn't over, he spat as the guards approached. Your lawyers already know, I cut him off, about the cooked books, the hidden losses, and your planned smear campaign. Would you like me to continue? The fight seemed to drain out of him. His shoulders slumped as the guards took his arms. Wait, I called as they started to lead him out. Your office needs to be cleared by end of day. I'll have your things sent home. To the guest room. His head snapped up. What? Oh, didn't I mention? I smiled sweetly. I'm filing for divorce. The papers should be delivered this afternoon. After Marvin was escorted out, Maria locked the door and turned to me. That was intense. Are you okay? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Josephine's name flashed on the screen. Put it on speaker, Maria suggested. I want to hear this. I answered, keeping my voice professional. Hello, Josephine. How dare you? She shrieked. After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me? I laughed. You mean like treating me like dirt for 5 years? Or maybe you mean undermining every achievement I've ever had? We gave you connections, status, a place in society. No, I said firmly. I gave myself those things. While you were busy looking down your nose at my little hobby, I was building an empire. You've destroyed my son's reputation, she wailed. Actually, he did that himself. I just exposed it. I pulled up another email on my screen. By the way, how's that country club membership working out? Silence. Then, what do you mean? Well, since Crawford Corp's membership was tied to Marvin's position as CEO and given the company's new leadership, I let the implications sink in. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. Check your inbox. The cancellation notice should be there already. The line went dead. Maria slow-clapped. Brutal, but deserved. My phone buzzed again, a text from Marvin. Please, we can work this out. Don't do this to us. Us? I showed Maria the message. There hasn't been an us since he chose to side with his mother over his wife. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jenny poked her head in. Your legal team is here with the divorce papers, and you might want to see this. She handed me a tablet open to a financial news site. The headline read, Tech CEO's hostile takeover of Crawford Corp. Inside the family drama. Great, I sighed. Now everyone knows. Actually, Maria scrolled through the comments. People are loving it. Look at these responses. Queen behavior. Corporate karma at its finest. You're trending on Twitter. Another knock. This time it was my PR team looking excited. Ma'am, we've had calls from every major business magazine. They want your story. The woman who built a tech empire while her husband and mother-in-law mocked her? It's media gold. I was about to respond when my phone lit up with a final text from Marvin. Mom's on her way to your office. She's not taking no for an answer. Perfect timing, I smiled, pulling up a document on my computer. Jenny, when Josephine arrives, show her straight in. What are you planning? Maria asked after everyone left. Remember how I said buying Crawford Corp was just the beginning? I turned my screen to show her. Look what else Marvin's been hiding. Maria's eyes widened as she read. The family trust he's been embezzling from his own mother? And now I own the company that controls that trust. I heard the elevator ding. Right on cue. Josephine burst in, designer handbag swinging like a weapon. You ungrateful little... Before you continue, I held up my hand. You might want to see what your precious son has been doing with your money. I turned my screen toward her. The color drained from her face as she read. This can't be true, she stammered. Oh, but it is. The question is, I leaned forward, what are you going to do about it? Josephine sank into a chair, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling. All this time, he played us both, I said softly. The difference is, I figured it out and did something about it. She looked up at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in 5 years. What happens now? I pushed a folder across my desk. That depends on whether you're ready to make a deal with someone who actually knows how to run a business. The morning of my company's IPO, I stood in front of Crawford Corp's executive boardroom, watching Marvin clean out his office across the hall. He'd insisted on doing it himself, one last grasp at dignity. Your morning coffee, Ms. CEO. Maria appeared beside me, handing me a steaming cup. Ready for the big show? Before I could answer, the elevator dinged. Josephine stepped out, looking different than I'd ever seen her. Gone were the designer labels and perfectly coiffed hair. Instead, she wore a simple business suit and a determined expression. Right on time, I nodded to her. Shall we? The boardroom was packed with executives, shareholders, and press. All eyes turned to us as we entered. Ladies and gentlemen, I took my place at the head of the table. Thank you for coming. As you know, today marks a historic merger between two companies and some significant changes in leadership. Marvin appeared in the doorway, a box of personal items in his arms. What's she doing here? He glared at Josephine. Sit down, Marvin. His mother's voice could have frozen hell. You've done enough damage. The room buzzed with whispers as he slunk into a chair at the far end of the table. I pulled up the presentation screen. First item of business, Crawford Corp's merger with my tech company, effective immediately. I clicked through the slides. Second, the restructuring of the family trust assets. Marvin's box slipped from his hands, photos and awards clattering to the floor. Mother, you can't. Actually, Josephine cut him off. I can and I am. The trust board voted this morning, unanimously. I continued as if there hadn't been an interruption. The combined companies will be rebranded under my tech firm's name. Our first order of business will be addressing the creative accounting that's been happening under previous management. This is ridiculous. Marvin stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Mother, after everything I've done, everything you've done? Josephine's voice trembled with rage. You mean like stealing from my trust? Lying to shareholders? Or perhaps you mean trying to destroy your wife's company to cover your tracks? The press corps was frantically taking notes. This was better than any press release we could have planned. I can explain, Marvin started. Save it for the SEC investigation, I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. Now, about those offshore accounts you thought nobody knew about? The color drained from his face. You wouldn't. Already did. I nodded to the back of the room, where two men in suits stood up. Gentleman from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, he's all yours. What followed was chaos. Cameras flashed as Marvin was escorted out, protesting loudly. Josephine watched with tears in her eyes, but her spine was steel. Moving on. I raised my voice over the commotion. Let's discuss the future. Our IPO goes live in exactly 1 hour. The projections are impressive. The meeting continued, but I could see the reporters sneaking out to file their stories. By lunch, we'd be trending on every business news site in the country. After the meeting, Josephine caught my arm. Alexa, I owe you an apology. Many apologies. Save them, I said, but not unkindly. Actions matter more than words. Are you ready to do your part? She nodded firmly. I've already spoken to the country club board. They're very interested in hearing about how a woman-led tech company saved a traditional business from collapse. Good. I checked my phone. Maria had sent me the first headlines. Tech Queen's Justice, Corporate Takeover Exposes Family Fraud. What happens now? Josephine asked quietly. Now? I smiled, showing her my phone's stock ticker app. We watch my company's value skyrocket while your son's lawyers try to explain where all that money went. And us? She gestured between us. Can we ever... That depends. I turned to face her fully. Can you accept that your daughter-in-law isn't just playing at business anymore? My dear, she laughed softly. I think you've more than proved that. My phone buzzed. A message from Marvin's lawyer requesting a meeting. Delete. One more thing, I told Josephine. That summer house you always wanted, the one Marvin promised but never delivered. She looked confused. What about it? Check your email. Consider it a signing bonus for your new position on our board of directors. I started walking toward my office. Oh, and Josephine. Yes? Next time you're there, remember, it was bought with money from my little online hobby. As I walked into my office, Maria was waiting with champagne. The stock market opens in 5 minutes. Ready to become a billionaire? I took a glass, looking out over the city that had watched me rise from a card table desk to this view. Ready to show them what playing shop on the internet really looks like. The stock has doubled since opening, Maria announced, bursting into my office 3 weeks after the IPO. And you've got to see this. She tossed a magazine on my desk, my face on the cover with the headline, The Queen of Tech, How one woman turned tables on corporate sexism. That's not even the best part, she grinned, pulling up a video on her tablet. Look who's making the rounds on daytime TV. There was Josephine, perfectly poised on a morning show couch, speaking passionately about women in business. My daughter-in-law taught me a valuable lesson about prejudice and preconceptions. Now, as a board member of her company, I'm committed to supporting female entrepreneurs. Well, that's a plot twist, I laughed, signing the last of Marvin's divorce papers. Speaking of plot twists, have you seen the latest from his legal team? No guilty plea? Maria guessed. Better. He's offering to testify against his old board members in exchange for a lighter sentence. I closed the folder with satisfaction. Turns out he wasn't the only one cooking the books. My office phone buzzed. Ms. Alexa, your 3 o'clock is here. The Silicon Valley Women's Business Association? Send them in. I straightened my jacket, then turned to Maria. Ready to launch our mentorship program? The conference room filled with young women entrepreneurs, their eyes wide as they took in the view from the top floor. I recognized that look, the same hunger for success I'd had 5 years ago. Ladies, I began, welcome to your first day of actually playing shop on the internet. Laughter rippled through the room. They'd all read the stories about Marvin's dismissive comments. 3 weeks ago, I took this company public at $50 a share. Today, we closed at $127. I clicked through slides showing our growth. But more importantly, we're about to change how business is done in Silicon Valley. The elevator dinged, and Josephine walked in, carrying folders. Sorry I'm late. The venture capital team needed signatures on the new fund. Perfect timing, I nodded to her. Ladies, meet our head of our new Women in Tech Investment Fund. She used to think online business was just a hobby. Now she manages a $1 billion portfolio dedicated to funding female founders. Josephine distributed the folders. Inside you'll find details about our mentorship program, seed funding opportunities, and... She smiled at me. A little story about why you should never underestimate a woman with a laptop and a dream. After the presentation, Maria caught me staring at Marvin's old office, now being renovated into a startup incubator space. Missing him? She teased. Missing who? I grinned. Oh, you mean the guy who's currently negotiating his plea deal? Funny how karma works. My phone chimed with a news alert. Crawford Corp fraud case. Expands. Former CEO names. Speaking of karma, Maria read over my shoulder. Looks like your ex-husband's country club buddies are about to have a very bad day. Ms. Alexa? Jenny appeared. The contractors need your approval on the incubator space design, and there's a delivery for you. She wheeled in a familiar card table, my first desk, rescued from storage. What's this doing here? I ran my hand over the worn surface. That was me, Josephine stepped in. I thought it might inspire our mentees. Show them where you started. Where we all start, I corrected her. With nothing but determination and a dream everyone else calls crazy. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marvin's sister. Just saw you on the cover of Forbes. Guess that little website wasn't so little after all. P.S. Mom seems happier now than she's been in years. Ready for the next board meeting? Maria checked her watch. We're announcing the global expansion. Actually, I looked around at my empire. The bustling offices, the young entrepreneurs heading to the incubator space, Josephine reviewing investment proposals with her team. I think I need a minute. I walked to the window, remembering all those nights I'd worked at that card table, dreaming of a view like this. Behind me, I heard the excited chatter of the mentee group, saw their reflections in the glass as they took selfies with their new business hero. Penny for your thoughts? Josephine joined me at the window. Just thinking about something you said at that first dinner, about getting a real job. She winced. I was wrong, so very wrong. No, I turned to face the room, my company, my success. You were right. I did need to get a real job. That's why I created one. Several thousand of them, actually. The elevator dinged again, delivering another group of aspiring entrepreneurs. I straightened my shoulders, ready to show them how to turn their own dreams into reality. Time to go play shop on the internet? Maria smirked. No, I picked up my presentation notes. Time to build some more empires. The courtroom fell silent as Marvin stood for sentencing. I sat in the back row between Maria and Josephine, watching my ex-husband's shoulders slump under his now ill-fitting suit. The defendant has pled guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud, embezzlement, and corporate malfeasance, the judge began. Should we feel bad? Maria whispered. I shook my head, thinking of all the nights I'd cried over their mockery, all the times I'd doubted myself because of their constant belittling. In consideration of your cooperation in exposing the broader conspiracy, the judge continued, this court sentences you to 5 years in federal prison. Josephine gripped my hand as the full sentence was read. I squeezed back, remembering our conversation from that morning. I've been thinking, she'd said over coffee in my office, about all those dinners where I laughed at your dreams. I wasn't just wrong about you, I was wrong about everything. Now, watching her son being led away in handcuffs, she sat straight-backed and resolute. He made his choices, she whispered, just like I made mine. My phone vibrated. Another message from the office. Our stock had hit a new high, and the first round of mentorship program graduates were launching their startups. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Ms. Alexa, how does it feel seeing your ex-husband sentenced? I'm not here to discuss personal matters, I stated firmly. I'm here because corporate fraud hurts everyone, investors, employees, and the entire business community. My company stands for transparency and innovation, not deception. Mrs. Crawford, I mean Ms. Josephine? Another reporter called out. How do you feel about your son's conviction? Josephine stepped forward, every inch the board director she'd become. I feel proud to be part of a company that values integrity over image. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a graduation ceremony to attend. Back at the office, 30 women waited in the incubator space, ready to present their business plans. The old card table sat in the corner, now bearing a plaque. Every empire starts somewhere. Before we begin, I addressed the group, I want to share something. Success isn't about revenge, though sometimes that's a nice bonus. Scattered laughter. It's about proving something to yourself, not others. But the revenge helped, right? One young entrepreneur called out, making everyone laugh. The best revenge, I smiled, is building something so amazing that those who doubted you have to watch your success from behind bars. Now who's ready to pitch? As the presentations began, Maria nudged me. CNN wants an exclusive. From mockery to millions, the tech queens rise. Counteroffer? I replied. They can cover our new initiative instead. Which one? The global expansion? The venture fund? This one. I handed her a tablet showing plans for a nationwide network of women's business incubators. We're converting all of Crawford Corp's old offices. Poetic justice, don't you think? Josephine reviewed the plans over my shoulder. The first one opens in the building where Marvin used to brag about his corner office. Exactly. His old office will be the main classroom. The elevator dinged, and Jenny rushed in. The partners from Silicon Valley's top venture capital firms are here. They want to discuss matching funds for the incubator program. Send them to the conference room. I turned to the graduating class. Ladies, ready to show some old school VCs what the future looks like? As we walked to the meeting, Josephine pulled me aside. Thank you. For what? For showing me what real strength looks like. For giving me a chance to be part of something meaningful. The conference room doors opened to reveal a dozen suited men, the same type who'd dismissed my ideas years ago. Gentlemen, I took my place at the head of the table. Let's talk about disrupting the old boys club. My phone lit up with a final message from Marvin's prison email account. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. I deleted it without responding. Behind me, 30 women entrepreneurs waited to pitch their dreams. Before me, the venture capitalists prepared their checkbooks. And beside me stood the two people who'd seen both my lowest moments and highest triumphs. Ready? Maria whispered. I thought about that card table, about all those nights of doubt and determination, about the girl who refused to give up when everyone said she was just playing at business. Ladies, I addressed my graduates, show them what empire building really looks like. As the first entrepreneur stepped forward to pitch, I caught my reflection in the window. Not a woman seeking revenge anymore, but a leader creating legacy. The view from the top wasn't about looking down on those who doubted you. It was about lifting up those who would follow. Now, I smiled at the room full of future CEOs. Let's go play shop on the internet.
I grew up in a family with a modest income. My parents held decent jobs, but with 4 siblings and me to support, we often faced financial challenges. Wearing hand-me-down clothes and eating budget-friendly meals was simply part of our everyday life. Thankfully, we had a house that my grandmother had passed down to my dad, providing us a stable home in a friendly neighborhood filled with families of varying income levels. The house next door sat empty for years until a new family moved in. Their son, Benjamin, who was my age, quickly became the only other kid in our area. Although Benjamin was homeschooled and I attended public school, our families arranged for us to spend time together, and we became inseparable friends. As I navigated social situations at school, I shared tips with Benjamin, which his dad, Henry, found invaluable. Over time, Henry recognized the need for Benjamin to experience a well-rounded education, especially in relation to their family business. As Benjamin flourished with our friendship, Henry began to see the positive impact of a more varied learning experience. He often expressed his gratitude in unique ways. Henry, a man of few words, never directly thanked me. Instead, he would send me home with abundant food for my family and surprise me and my siblings with small gifts on our birthdays or other special occasions. However, not everyone was pleased. Emily, Benjamin's mother, grew increasingly uncomfortable with how generously Henry treated me, believing it unfair to their son and too indulgent toward the neighbor's child. She voiced her discontent through snide remarks and attempted to discourage Henry from showering me with gifts. Yet, her efforts often backfired, as Henry would respond by giving me even more, almost defiantly. Beyond how Henry treated me, Emily faced her own struggles in her marriage. Their frequent arguments created a tense atmosphere that affected Benjamin, causing him to become more withdrawn. After many attempts to reassure him, I earned Benjamin's trust, and we grew closer. As time passed, I found myself developing romantic feelings for him, but I never acted on them. There was one instance when Benjamin came to my house visibly upset after a fight with his mother. He seemed restless as he paced in my room. "What's wrong? You seem really upset. You know you can talk to me, right?" I asked gently. "I know, but there's something I'm not sure I can share," he replied, his voice heavy. "You don't have to tell me everything, but if you feel up to it, just share a little. Sometimes, talking helps," I encouraged. "It's about my mom. We had a huge fight. I couldn't take how she treated my dad anymore, and I lost it. She said something really hurtful, and that's why I'm so upset." "I'm really sorry to hear that. Do you feel comfortable sharing what she said?" "It's too painful. I'd rather not get into it. Families are complicated, but they're still family. Try not to let anger ruin your relationships with them. Give yourself time to process your feelings." "Thanks for being so supportive, Kathleen. You always know how to comfort me," he said, a small smile breaking through his distress. At that moment, I believed it was best for Benjamin to remain close to his family, trusting that they had his best interests at heart, despite their flaws. If only I had known the deeper truths, I would never have encouraged him to forgive and stay close to them, especially his mother. As time went on, we both graduated high school and enrolled in the same college. Benjamin chose to take online classes while I attended campus. Having worked since I was 15, I had saved enough to rent my own apartment with some help from Henry. Moving out allowed Benjamin and me to spend more time together away from our families. Eventually, we both admitted our strong feelings for each other, and after an awkward but heartfelt confession, we officially became a couple. My parents were thrilled, but Benjamin's parents had mixed reactions. Henry offered a calm congratulations, while Emily showed her disapproval with a grunt. We decided not to dwell on her reaction and focused on our new relationship. After college, Benjamin proposed, and within 2 weeks, we were married. At that moment, I felt like I had everything. My childhood friend was now my husband, always there for me, and I loved him wholeheartedly. However, shortly after we tied the knot, Benjamin began to travel more for work. Concerned about my being alone, he suggested that I move in with his parents. I was hesitant, but he did his best to convince me. "I'm not sure about living with your parents. Your mom and I don't really get along," I replied, "but think about it, we could have our own space, a whole floor just for us, complete with our own kitchen. I want you to feel secure, and being close to my family would ease my mind. It would be like having our own place but with the option of them visiting or me visiting them. Please consider it. It could help improve your relationship with my mom." "Okay, if it means that much to you, I'll give it a try. I just hope it doesn't cause any issues between us." "Thanks, love. I'll do my best to make sure everything goes smoothly." I agreed to his request because I wanted him to feel at ease when he couldn't be with me. Having some personal space also reassured me, knowing my parents lived nearby if I needed them. However, once I moved in with his family, I quickly realized that Benjamin hadn't been completely forthcoming. I wouldn't have the house to myself. I was stuck sharing it with his mother, Emily. Whenever Benjamin traveled for work, he followed his dad's orders, leaving me alone with a woman who didn't particularly like me. Thankfully, Emily's disdain mostly manifested in the form of occasional snide comments. The worst part was when she would ask about my food preferences and then deliberately fail to prepare anything for me. Often exhausted from my own job, I'd either whip up a quick meal or resort to takeout. As long as I kept to my room, things remained uneventful. That was until one day when Benjamin asked me to rummage through his office to find and scan a specific file for him. As I sifted through his cluttered drawers, one in particular caught my attention because it felt different. When I touched it, I noticed it was less full than the others, with a hidden compartment at the bottom. Though I knew I shouldn't pry, curiosity overwhelmed me. I opened it and found a file that intrigued me, a paternity test showing that Henry wasn't Benjamin's biological father. I was shocked. How could Benjamin have kept such a significant secret? I wondered if Henry even knew the truth. Before I let my thoughts spiral, I decided to return the file and send Benjamin the scans he needed. My instincts urged me to snap a quick photo of the paternity test first. After tidying up, I found the document Benjamin required and sent him the scanned copies. Back in my room, I tried to push aside the unsettling details and hoped to discuss them with Benjamin face to face. Suddenly, there was a knock on my door. Emily walked in, her expression tense, and accused me of uncovering their hidden truth. I admitted I had, and she revealed that Henry was unaware, emphasizing his obsession with having a successor. Emily defended her actions, claiming Benjamin was complicit in the deception, having grown accustomed to their way of life and unwilling to let it go. "Are you really convinced this is okay? What if I tell Henry?" I challenged her. "Oh, please, do you honestly think someone like you could disrupt our little fantasy? I'd simply convince Henry that you're making up stories to cause trouble. He'd choose us over you in a heartbeat. Your little scheme is doomed to fail. Keep dreaming. I've never liked you, Kathleen. I've been trying to steer Benjamin away from you for years. This is the perfect excuse for him to find someone from his own social circle. The truth will always come out. It always does. Save your fairy tales for someone who cares. Good luck with that. If you're smart, you won't meddle in this." With that, she left the room, and my heart raced with a whirlwind of questions. The revelations about Benjamin and Emily left me feeling deeply betrayed. Emily had never hidden her disdain for me, but I never anticipated her going so far as to deceive me like this. What hurt the most was Benjamin's betrayal. How could he deceive the person who raised him? How long had he known? Did he feel any guilt? I also feared he might choose to side with Emily and abandon me. That night, sleep eluded me as my mind spiraled with questions. The following day was a blur. When Henry returned from his work trip, I couldn't meet his gaze. Guilt gnawed at me. I wanted to confess everything, but I feared Emily would twist the narrative and portray me as the villain. That evening, Henry suggested we have dinner together. I sat silently, responding only when he asked about my work. During dinner, Emily shared her desire for a vacation with Benjamin. "Henry, I really miss Benjamin. I think it would be wonderful for us to enjoy a 6-week trip to Hawaii together. He's been working so hard. He definitely deserves a break, don't you think?" "But doesn't Benjamin have a lot of work commitments?" "I'm not an expert, but won't the business be affected by his absence?" Henry replied, looking concerned. Henry ran the business for years before Benjamin joined. "A short break shouldn't be a problem," Emily insisted. "You're right, and Benjamin could use the time off." "Okay, go ahead. I'll take care of things here." "Thanks, Henry." "Kathleen, why don't you join them?" "Oh, that won't work. It's supposed to be a special time for mothers and sons. Plus, it might feel awkward, like I'd be intruding." "What do you think, Kathleen? Want to come?" "Oh, she probably has her own plans. Let her decide," Henry interjected. I was about to voice my discomfort when I suddenly felt a sharp kick to my shin under the table. Looking up, I met Emily's stern gaze. I wanted to speak out, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Feeling trapped, I concocted a clever plan. I would speak to Henry when they weren't around. So, I stayed silent, nodding along as if I were fine with the trip. Emily looked pleased, and Henry gave her the green light. Later that evening, I called Benjamin. "Are you going on the trip with your mom?" I asked. "Yeah, I don't really have a choice," he replied, sounding resigned. "That's not true. You can choose not to go along with her plans. Things are messed up. And honestly, part of that is because of your choices. What do you mean? How is any of this my fault? Benjamin asked, confusion lacing his voice. If you had respected my privacy earlier, none of this would have happened. There's a lesson I didn't share with you. 5 years ago, during a big fight with my mom, she revealed that I'm not actually Henry's son. I thought about telling Henry and even hinted at it to my mom, but she dismissed it, warning it could lead to us being kicked out, so we're stuck keeping this secret. Now that you know, I can't keep you in my life anymore. He hung up, leaving me in shock. I couldn't believe that the person I cared for could be so heartless. Was this who he always was, or had he changed due to greed? I cried myself to sleep, struggling to comprehend how our 5 years of friendship and love had unraveled into something so painful. It felt as though I had been nothing more than a replaceable friend to him. The next day, fueled by anger and a desire for payback, I caught Benjamin quietly preparing for his trip with Emily. Although sadness weighed on me, I resolved to take the high road. Henry would be away on a brief business trip for the next 5 days, so I would have to hold off on my plan until he returned. Once Benjamin and Emily left, I occupied myself by going through their things. Unfortunately, the hidden compartment in Benjamin's drawer was empty, and the file was missing. It seemed Emily had disposed of it, but it didn't matter, I still had a picture of it. As I waited patiently, I gathered evidence of what Benjamin and Emily were up to. I stumbled upon Benjamin's secret Instagram account, where he shared stories of going out with various women and thanked his mom for introducing him to these amazing ladies. Despite my heartache, I took screenshots of each post. Armed with this proof, I called Henry and urged him to come home immediately. Just as he promised, he arrived by 8 p.m., looking anxious and concerned. I confessed to Henry that things were not going well and revealed the true purpose behind Benjamin and Emily's trip, to help Benjamin find a new wife. Henry's face fell as he processed the screenshots I had shown him. His initial surprise morphed into disbelief, then anger and disgust. Stammering, he demanded to know how anyone could do something so despicable. I urged him to sit down, emphasizing the importance of the revelations I was about to share. Holding up a printed copy of the images, I laid the evidence before him. He sat in silence, grappling with the shocking truth. As I hesitated to share everything I had discovered, I watched his expression shift from shock to fury. Without a word, he quickly called his bank to stop his credit cards, realizing Emily and Benjamin relied on those for their trips. He also canceled Benjamin's work card, leaving them financially stranded. Once he dealt with the immediate threat, Henry's anger began to simmer down. I apologized for unloading so much at once and expressed my regret. He reassured me, saying he never imagined Emily would stoop to such depths. He was grateful to have uncovered the truth while still retaining control of the business. Concerned that Emily and Benjamin might return, Henry decided to end his marriage with Emily and asked both of them to leave the house. I supported his decision and suggested that he file for divorce from Benjamin as well. However, he insisted I stay, expressing his desire to pass down the business to me as if I were his own daughter. The following days were a whirlwind of sadness and anger as we proceeded with the divorce. Ignoring repeated attempts from Emily and Benjamin to contact us, Henry took steps to ensure our safety, obtaining restraining orders against them. When Benjamin finally reached out, he accused me of betraying him by telling Henry everything. I denied his claims, assuring him I had proof of his mother's and his deceit. He couldn't believe I had evidence and labeled me as heartless. As the weeks passed, Henry and I finalized the divorce. We gathered Benjamin and Emily's belongings and gave them 2 months to retrieve their items from storage. I left my job to join forces with Henry, determined to leave the past behind us. Despite the difficulties, we found comfort in each other's company. Finally, I opened up about my experiences, urging everyone to choose the right path no matter the obstacles, for you never know how life might repay your choices. Hey, Richard, where did you stash the gifts? I've searched every corner of the house, but they seem to have vanished. The moment I brought up the presents, I noticed a flicker of anxiety on Richard's face. My curiosity piqued. I asked, "What did you do with them, Richard?" With a hesitant sigh, he confessed, "I sold them." I was taken aback. "Why on earth would you sell the gifts?" He explained, "I needed the money, and honestly, those gifts wouldn't have been useful to you anyway." I was incredulous. "Are you serious?" "Those gifts were essential for our budget, especially the baby's needs." Richard shrugged off my concerns. Why are you making such a fuss over something so trivial? They were given to me by my parents, so I can do whatever I want with them. They're mine. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Laura Smith, a 31-year-old nurse married to Richard, a businessman who owns fishery farms, where we catch and distribute fish. Life was good at first. Richard's vibrant spirit filled our days. But everything changed when his business faced a devastating blow. A storm capsized the ship carrying fish from his farm. As a small business owner, this setback hit him hard, plunging him into a deep sadness. I tried my best to support him emotionally, but my savings couldn't make a dent in his troubles. Despite my demanding job, I cooked his favorite meals and took him out to his favorite places, hoping to lift his spirits. For weeks, he lost himself in video games, ignoring his responsibilities at home. I worked long hours and managed the household, even on my days off, while he showed no willingness to help, which left me feeling frustrated. I understood the struggles of running a business, but I believed it was vital to share the burden of recovery. I might not be a business expert, but I knew that dwelling on setbacks wouldn't help us move forward. Instead, we needed to find solutions and improve efficiency. I gave Richard the space he needed to grieve for about a month before I finally found the courage to speak up. Richard, I know you've been down since the setback, but maybe it's time to start looking forward. We need to find solutions rather than stay stuck in the past. Constant sadness could only make things worse. As I anticipated, he reacted defensively, accusing me of being insensitive and selfish for focusing on business rather than offering emotional support. Nevertheless, I pressed on. Sweetheart, I may come off as blunt, but I genuinely believe that clinging to this loss is hurting your business. I care about you, and I want nothing but success for you because I love you. Richard didn't take it well. He chose to retreat into his video games, shutting me out with his headphones. It took over a month for him to return to his usual routine, and I felt a wave of relief as things began to normalize. However, I noticed a shift in his habits. He started coming home at odd hours, sometimes past midnight, sometimes in the morning, and occasionally not at all. When I confronted him about his erratic schedule, he dismissed me with a sarcastic remark, "Businessmen don't have shifts, you know, we control our time." His arrogance left me questioning the true state of affairs. Months passed, and another setback hit Richard. This time, though, he didn't fall into despair. The spark of happiness in him had dimmed, replaced by an ever-present sense of stress and urgency. One day, he approached me, asking for financial help with his business. Surprised by his sudden request, I reminded him of my own financial struggles, having managed the household expenses during his business downturn. My reply clearly displeased him. He wore a look of disdain. A pang of guilt hit me, making me reconsider my stance. I reflected on my previous carefree life in my 50s, where I had indulged in travel and adventure, spending nearly all my savings. Perhaps it was time to make a sacrifice for my husband. As a couple, supporting each other was paramount. So, I decided to dip into my savings for a planned trip to Hawaii, hoping it would help stabilize Richard's business. Sadly, the hoped-for improvement never came. In the midst of all this, I discovered I was pregnant, a moment of pure joy. Yet, Richard's reaction was overshadowed by concern, leaving me confused about what the future held for us. Despite my excitement about the pregnancy, Richard's worry about providing a stable life for our baby overshadowed my joy. I tried to reassure him, insisting that the timing was just right. Yet, Richard remained apprehensive, attributing his fears to typical first-time parent jitters. I believed that with time, his worries would ease. Honestly, though, I shared some of his concerns about his inconsistent income. Supporting a family on a single income stream felt daunting, and while I couldn't rely solely on my earnings, I hoped that once Richard became a father, he would embrace his responsibilities, and our situation would improve. Regrettably, instead of becoming more responsible, Richard seemed increasingly careless with each passing day. Borrowing money became a common occurrence, each time for urgent and often questionable reasons, whether to pay his employees or to invest in a new type of fish. I felt frustrated but held back from making any drastic moves. Knowing I needed to focus on the baby, I started to minimize my interactions with him, concentrating on my own well-being and that of our child. Initially, I didn't mind helping him, but his pleas soon morphed from polite requests into outright demands. What used to be sincere asks turned into direct commands like, "Laura, I need you to send me $1,000 right away." I tried to understand the reasons behind his growing financial needs, but they always led back to accumulating debt from small business loans with rising interest rates. Refusing his requests sparked immature outbursts from him, door slamming, cutlery rattling, and disdainful looks became the norm until I eventually relented. Richard's demeanor became more unbearable, especially during my pregnancy's last 6 months. My in-laws threw a baby shower for us, and I was grateful for their support. When I received thoughtful gifts from them, their friends, and family, it provided a much-needed break from the months of tension and worry. Receiving those generous gifts filled me with joy, knowing they would provide us with all the essentials our baby would need in those first months. With our tight budget, acquiring these necessities would have been a significant burden. However, the next morning, I was taken aback to find the living room empty, with no gifts in sight. Thinking Richard might have moved them to the storeroom, I checked, but there was no sign of anything. When I called him, he didn't answer. Upon his return, I confronted Richard about the missing gifts. To my horror, he confessed he had sold them. Shocked, I asked him why he would do such a thing, and he coldly replied that the gifts were of no use to us. Heartbroken and frustrated, I explained how essential those items were for the baby: clothes, a crib, blankets, a stroller, and toiletries. I couldn't grasp why he would sell something so vital, especially given our tight financial situation. Richard remained indifferent and dismissive, insisting that because the gifts were given by my parents, he had the right to do whatever he wanted with them. I argued that those gifts were intended for our child, not for him to sell off for his own gain. As tears streamed down my face, I felt a deep sense of betrayal and helplessness. I begged him to understand that the gifts had saved us money we couldn't afford to waste again. Richard, however, remained unrepentant, insisting he would acquire everything we needed once the baby arrived. Skeptical, I challenged him, asking how he intended to do that without sufficient funds, but he brushed off the financial hurdles with an unsettling confidence. When his gaze dropped, a sudden realization hit me: he was short on cash. Rolling my eyes, I pressed him, "Where's the money from those gifts you sold?" "I don't have it," he replied, his tone sharp. "Then where did it go?" I demanded. "I invested it in my business," he defended. Frustration boiled over as I retorted, "Seriously, Richard, spare me the lectures. I'm done with this. You're a perpetual downer, complaining about every little setback." His defensiveness only fueled my anger. "What's your deal? You contribute nothing to the household expenses, barely lift a finger, and live off my earnings. Now you have the nerve to lecture me. Instead of helping, you just add to my burdens. If you're unhappy, why not just leave? I crave some peace in my own home. Being around you feels stifling. I'm too exhausted to argue any longer." Richard's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. Holding back my frustration, I retreated to my room and slammed the door. Something was off with him. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, perhaps even cheating or getting involved in something illegal. That night, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, I decided to investigate. I secretly slipped a sleeping aid into Richard's soup, ensuring he would fall into a deep sleep. With him out cold, I used his fingerprints to unlock his phone, meticulously combing through his emails and messages. After an hour of searching, I finally uncovered a shocking truth. Expecting to find evidence of an affair, I was stunned to learn that Richard was tangled up in illegal drug dealings. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. It all started after his initial business setbacks, leading him to delve into the dark world of smuggling drugs through his fishing enterprise. Within the fishing community, there's an unspoken knowledge that illegal substances can be hidden within fish and meat cargo. I had been completely unaware of this murky side of his business. One email disclosed Richard's initial hesitations about entering this world, but the lure of quick cash proved too tempting to resist. The pressures from drug dealers seemed like a solution to his financial woes. He viewed it as a temporary fix to bounce back from his setbacks, but the allure of easy money drew him deeper into a perilous lifestyle. As his involvement intensified, he began to relish the effortless income, which fostered a newfound arrogance. This unexpected venture into criminality was the catalyst for Richard's downfall, steering him down a treacherous path. The situation worsened after a disastrous shipwreck that claimed both the fish and the drugs. Now, with drug dealers demanding compensation for their losses, Richard found himself trapped, forced to ensure the safe transport of their products. Hearing all of this during a conversation with a dealer, I, as a nurse, couldn't bear to stay with someone engaged in such illegal activities. Having witnessed the devastation caused by drug abuse, I found it morally and ethically unacceptable to remain complicit. I carefully collected the evidence without leaving a trace of my tampering and returned his phone. Sleep eluded me that night. The following morning, while Richard was still asleep, I gathered my belongings and left, seeking refuge with a trusted friend and colleague. Fearful of reporting him to the police directly, I worried that exposing Richard's actions could implicate others. If he or his associates discovered my involvement, I could be in serious danger. I quickly contacted my colleague's cousin, who happened to be a lawyer. He advised me to report the information anonymously through a neutral inquiry. If my evidence was solid, the authorities could launch an investigation and apprehend those involved without linking me to it. I took his advice, being truthful, and shared all the evidence with the police anonymously. Meanwhile, when Richard awoke and noticed my absence, he misinterpreted the situation. He assumed I was upset about the gifts he had given me and texted me, expecting an apology and hoping I would return home. Ignoring his messages, I felt a sense of relief that he jumped to such conclusions. It bought me the time I needed to execute my plan without raising any suspicion. At 6 months pregnant, I grappled with emotional turmoil and fear. If Richard discovered my involvement, I worried he might harm me or the baby. I spent the week of the police investigation at my colleague's house for safety. After a week, my lawyer informed me that the police had verified my evidence, leading to criminal charges against Richard and several accomplices. Caught between relief and sadness over Richard's impending imprisonment, I received a call from him just a few hours later. My heart raced as I answered, anxious to see if he had pieced together the truth. In a trembling voice, he explained that he had been arrested on drug charges and insisted on his innocence. Despite his desperate plea for help, I felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over me, knowing he had no idea of my involvement. Richard, I can't be linked to any illegal activities. Forget about bail. This is the end for us. I'm starting divorce proceedings. I hung up quickly, cutting off any chance for him to respond. This was part of the attorney's strategy. After his arrest, I could pursue a divorce that emphasized my separation from his criminal life. It was a calculated move designed to catch both Richard and his associates off guard, protecting my future. When Richard's parents learned of his arrest, they chose to distance themselves, unwilling to tarnish their family's reputation by supporting a criminal. This worked in my favor, allowing the divorce to proceed smoothly and without complications. Now, 2 years later, I've welcomed a beautiful baby girl into my life. Reflecting on those tumultuous days, I commend myself for trusting my instincts and cutting ties with Richard. Had I not, he might still be weighing us down financially, or worse, endangering both me and my child. Wrongdoers lack moral values, and the secret of my reporting him to the police remains between my coworker, my lawyer, and me. Currently, I'm staying at my parents' house, receiving financial support for my daughter from Richard's parents until he's potentially released, though that seems unlikely anytime soon. Choosing the allure of quick cash may seem like an easy solution, but more often than not, it leads one down a perilous path filled with challenges and criminal repercussions. Hey, James, you're back early. I thought you wouldn't return until Sunday. It's my house. I don't owe anyone an explanation for when I come and go. No need to be defensive. I was just asking because you mentioned being gone for the weekend. But fine, let's not argue. Did you bring dinner? I didn't make anything. There were leftovers from this morning, and I spent the day catching up on housework. Of course, you probably just lounged around all day watching TV. Typical. Why would you say that? Give me 20 minutes, and I'll fix something for you. I provide for you, give you a comfortable life, and this is how you repay me, being lazy and ungrateful. Hello, my name is Emily. I'm 39 and have been married to James for 8 years. I grew up with my single mother, and after high school, I started working to help her out. My first job was as a cashier at a local supermarket. I saved every penny I could and worked long hours, sometimes 2 shifts back-to-back during the busy seasons. Eventually, a friend taught me some finance basics, and I began handling the store's accounts and inventory. The owner took notice, and before long, I was promoted to manager, overseeing the entire staff. One day, a customer stormed in, furious, claiming he'd lost his wallet and accusing one of my employees of taking it. I stepped in calmly, reminding him that everyone was responsible for their belongings. Despite his frustration, I remained composed, offering to help him find it. As he vented, I discreetly messaged security to pull up footage from the past 17 minutes in the aisle where he'd been shopping. At the same time, I called the local police for assistance. "Sir," I interrupted gently, "we have the footage, and the police are already on their way. We've identified a suspect." Sure enough, the police arrived quickly, reviewed the footage, and recognized the culprit as a local thief. They took down the details and assured us they'd apprehend him. The next day, while I was immersed in my work, the same customer came back. "Hey, I didn't get a chance to properly thank you for helping me yesterday," he said. Curious, I asked if he'd found his wallet. He told me that the police had caught the thief in a nearby lane, and everything had been returned to him. He was clearly relieved and grateful for how fast we'd acted. Blushing a little from the attention, I shrugged it off, saying, "I was just doing my job. I'm glad it worked out." He apologized for his behavior the day before, explaining that he was new in town and had panicked when he lost his ID and credit cards. I reassured him that it was understandable. Then, he asked for my name. "Emily," I replied. He introduced himself as James, explaining he lived just a few buildings away. To thank me properly, he asked if I'd like to grab a coffee. At first, I hesitated, unsure if it was a good idea, but his sincerity won me over, and I agreed. That was the beginning of our story, an unexpected connection from a chaotic moment at the supermarket leading to our first date. Our connection deepened with time, and a few months into our relationship, when my lease expired, James suggested I move in with him. Those days were the happiest I'd ever known. We fell in love effortlessly. James worked long hours at an IT company, but our weekends were filled with parties and adventures, making life feel vibrant. For 3 wonderful years, we built a relationship that seemed unbreakable. One afternoon, during a casual chat with my mom, she shared something that struck me deeply. "Emily, after your father passed, I poured everything into raising you. It's been my greatest joy to see you grow into such a strong, independent woman." Something in her voice made me uneasy. "Why are you saying this, Mom? Is everything okay?" "Honey, I'm getting older, and I worry that one day I'll be gone, and you'll be left alone. I just want to see you settle down. I want to see you as a bride before I go." I brushed it off at first, uncomfortable with the thought, but her words stuck with me. That evening, when James saw I wasn't myself, he asked what was bothering me. "Hey, what's wrong? You've been quiet all night." Reluctantly, I told him about my mom's concerns. To my surprise, he didn't hesitate. "I've actually been thinking about it too. Let's get married." "Are you serious?" My heart raced as I waited for his response. "Of course I'm serious." The joy I felt was indescribable. I practically jumped on the bed in excitement. We soon introduced each other to our families and shared the news. My mom, overwhelmed with emotion, asked James to take good care of me, her only family. His parents welcomed me warmly, thrilled by our decision. After we married, life was blissful for a while. Though James expressed hesitation about having children, he enjoyed our carefree, spontaneous lifestyle, but I had always dreamed of starting a family, and eventually, he agreed. 6 years into our marriage, we welcomed our daughter Megan, who became the light of our lives. Balancing work and caring for a newborn was harder than I imagined, so James suggested I take a break from my job to focus on Megan. He assured me his income would be enough to support us, and I trusted him. But as time passed, James's support in the house diminished. While he was attentive during my pregnancy, helping out when he could, after Megan arrived, he became more distant. His once helpful attitude shifted to complaints about being tired, even with the simplest tasks like picking up groceries. At first, I thought he was just adjusting to the changes in our lives, as we both had to give up our adventurous weekends for diaper changes and sleepless nights. But the shift in his attitude grew more pronounced. He began to criticize me, claiming I was lazy, that I wasn't pulling my weight. Our conversations grew tense, and the carefree love we once shared felt like a distant memory. I tried everything to make him happy. I cooked his favorite meals, kept the house spotless, and took full responsibility for Megan. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. James started going out without me, often coming home late from work, claiming he needed a break. Soon, weekends were filled with parties and outings with friends, without me. The more I tried to hold things together, the more resentful he became. He would nitpick every little thing: the food wasn't good enough, the house wasn't clean enough, my efforts weren't enough. I began to question myself, wondering if I was failing as a wife and mother. James, in his frustration, made it clear that he missed the freedom we once had before parenthood. Despite his love for Megan, he resented the sacrifices we had to make, and I could see the strain it put on him. I suggested he continue his social life, hoping it would ease the tension, but it didn't. His complaints escalated, and soon, even minor things set him off. The warmth in his voice disappeared, replaced with irritation. I felt trapped in a cycle of trying to please someone who no longer seemed to care. Thoughts of divorce crept into my mind, but the fear of being alone, especially after losing my mom, kept me from acting on it. With no one to turn to, I felt isolated. Megan's well-being became my only priority, and the thought of raising her alone, possibly in poverty, terrified me. So, I stayed, I endured, but as the years went by, the love I had for James withered away, the loneliness grew, and with it, the realization that I had lost myself in a relationship that was slowly crumbling. I stayed, not because I wanted to, but because I was too afraid to leave. I longed for Megan to grow older, hoping it would free me from this miserable situation. Until then, I had no choice but to endure James's erratic behavior. One evening, when he crossed the line, it was during a weekend he was supposed to spend with friends. I hadn't cooked dinner, relying on leftovers from lunch, but James unexpectedly came home early. "James, you're back? I thought you wouldn't return until Sunday," I said, trying to hide my surprise. His face darkened, and he snapped, "This is my house. I come and go as I please. I don't owe you an explanation." This aggressive tone had become his norm. When I calmly asked why he was upset, he shouted, "Why are you making a fuss? I said I'd be gone for the weekend. Just shut up already. I don't have time to argue with you, go make me dinner." I explained that since we had leftovers, I hadn't cooked a new meal. But he immediately accused me of being lazy. "I knew it. You've been sitting around doing nothing all day while I'm gone." Trying to de-escalate, I offered to prepare something in 20 minutes, but he kept attacking. "You're useless. Always clumsy, turning this house into a mess." He pointed to Megan's toys scattered around, even though it was normal for a home with a child to have some clutter. Then he marched into the kitchen, complaining about a single unwashed plate, something I planned to clean after dinner. When I asked why he was overreacting, he completely lost it. He stormed to the fridge, grabbed whatever he could, and threw it on the floor. Furious, he tossed the leftover food into the sink. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Stop it, James. I've worked hard to keep this house in order. This place was filthy when I moved in, and I've cleaned it, managed the house, and worked a job even before we were married." But he wasn't listening. "I gave you a life of comfort, and you're still ungrateful. You used to live in that tiny, shabby apartment, but I took pity on you and brought you into my home. I could have married someone smarter, someone better, but I settled for you, a cashier. I took you to places you could have and never afforded. You should be thanking me instead of whining. Just do your job and serve me." Humiliated, tears stung my eyes. I tried to speak through the sobs. "I thought you did all this because you loved me, not as some favor." But he brushed off my pain, accusing me of manipulating him with emotions, claiming I had trapped him. He stormed out, leaving me alone in the house, crushed and missing my mom more than ever, reminiscing about the days when we were happy. The next day, James returned. As soon as I opened the door, he handed me divorce papers. "Sign them," he demanded coldly. Exhausted, I agreed without a fight, surprising him with my calm response. Annoyed, he said, "Good. It's better this way, or I'd make your life hell." Feeling liberated, I packed my things, gave him an envelope, and told him I'd send the signed papers with my conditions. He scoffed, calling me a parasite who had lived off him for years. He swore I wouldn't get a penny. But I calmly mentioned going to court, and his smugness faltered when he opened the envelope. Inside were copies of all the evidence I had against him, gathered by an investigator I'd hired. They had uncovered the reason for James's sudden shift, his infidelity. The photos were undeniable. I had seen the proof earlier that day. Instead of spending weekends with friends, James was with different women. Even after all his cruelty, I had thought about giving him another chance. But when I saw the evidence, I knew I had to end it. When James saw it, he barely flinched. "I wasn't serious about any of them," he said dismissively, "just having a little fun." His words enraged me. Fun? I've let you stay out late, go on vacations without me, hoping you'd step up as a father. But you grew distant after Megan was born. I gave up everything to focus on our family, and this is how you repay me? But James didn't care. He just stood there, indifferent, as the life we had built together crumbled. In response to James's betrayal, I scooped up our daughter, Megan, and left the house, checking into a hotel for a few days. I reached out to my former boss at the supermarket where I had once worked, sharing my situation with him. He was taken aback and immediately offered me a position in inventory management. Familiar with the staff and the work environment, I quickly settled back into my role. My boss even arranged for temporary accommodation in an apartment recently vacated by previous tenants. During this period, I hired a lawyer and sent divorce terms to James, demanding child support and significant alimony due to his infidelity. While he attempted to negotiate and called for reconciliation, I stood firm, determined to seek compensation for the pain and trauma he had caused. James hadn't limited himself to a single affair. He had engaged in multiple relationships with various women, including colleagues and random acquaintances from parties and trips. His involvement with the wrong crowd had also led to occasional drug use, likely fueling his escalating anger and frustration directed at me. Distraught by his actions, I contacted James's parents and revealed the disturbing details of his behavior. They were devastated to learn the extent of his wrongdoing. To further expose his actions, I sent them incriminating photos showing him in compromising situations with his colleagues at work. My lawyer informed me that James was facing challenges at his job, with co-workers aware of his affairs. His manager had even threatened to fire him if he didn't change his behavior. Many of the colleagues involved had left the office in shame, their reputations irreparably damaged. Despite the fallout, James continued working to meet his financial obligations, including alimony and child support. Several months later, I received a remorseful email from him. He acknowledged the damage his actions had done to our relationship and expressed gratitude for the care I had provided, realizing the importance of my role in maintaining our home. However, despite the emotional weight of his message, I refused to entertain the idea of reconciliation. His nostalgia stemmed from the comfort I had given him, which could never erase the reality of his mistreatment. Throughout our relationship, he had made me feel expendable, eroding my self-esteem with his arrogance and disdain. I couldn't go back to a life where my daughter saw me being treated like a doormat. Prioritizing our well-being, I used my savings and alimony to secure an apartment, allowing us to live with dignity. I was committed to creating a nurturing environment for Megan, one that emphasized the importance of self-worth. Through my earnings and child support, I was determined to provide her with a solid foundation, aspiring to see her grow into a confident and independent woman. Hello, I'm Sharon, and at 32 years old, I've recently emerged from a deeply unhealthy relationship, one that has become a rather ironic tale that I can't help but laugh at now. Before diving into that story, let me share a little about my background. I grew up in a wealthy family, which I've always appreciated, as it spared me from financial struggles during my upbringing. My parents, being wise, advised me to keep our wealth under wraps to avoid attracting those who might want to take advantage of us. Following their counsel, I lived a modest life, with my belongings subtly hinting at my family's affluence. When it was time for college, I chose a university far from home, eager to explore the world and assert my independence. To fully embrace this new experience, I lived on a budget like many of my peers, discovering the joys of thrift shopping and simple brands. Although I had access to a significant trust fund after graduation, I felt a strong urge to carve out my own path and work for a meaningful life rather than relying on my inheritance. A year after I graduated, I met Benjamin, my ex-husband, through a dating app. Our early dates were filled with charm and mutual gift-giving, and after 3 years together, he suggested I meet his mother, Margaret. I won't delve into the details of our first encounter, but the lead-up was significant. While I was open to meeting her, I explained that introducing my parents might take longer due to distance and busy schedules. We planned to coordinate a meeting with his mother, which marked the start of an unexpected chapter in our relationship. However, Benjamin suggested we could meet her as soon as this weekend, which caught me off guard. I understood his eagerness, given how much he idolized his mother, but the rush made me uneasy. My apprehension grew when Benjamin warned me that his family was quite affluent, something I had gathered from the lavish gifts he'd given me. He felt it necessary to caution me about his mother's tendency to judge people based on their social status. He didn't want me to be caught off guard or hurt by any potential remarks she might make. Although he reassured me that his feelings for me wouldn't waver, I couldn't shake the nervousness about our impending meeting. Sadly, Benjamin's warning didn't quite prepare me for my experience with Margaret. From the very beginning, our interactions were fraught with tension. Margaret epitomized the stereotypical elitist, making her disapproval of me painfully evident. When we first met, she scoffed at my choice of clothing from a regular store like Zara, setting a negative tone for our relationship. Benjamin often attended his mother's dinner parties and would plead for me to join him. In these moments, I was forced to deal with her contempt, even though I would have preferred to avoid her altogether. Margaret frequently insinuated that my interest in Benjamin was financially motivated. Despite my attempts to clarify that I didn't need his money, coming from a wealthy background myself, she would dismiss my words, derogatorily calling me a peasant. This was not only hurtful but also disrespectful to those who truly struggled financially. Benjamin's reluctance to confront his mother only deepened my feelings of isolation and undervaluation within our relationship. Navigating Margaret's antagonism was challenging enough, but her birthday party was the breaking point. At a large family gathering, she made it a point to ridicule me in front of everyone. That evening, she mocked everything about me, my outfit, my speech, even my mannerisms, turning me into the butt of the joke while Benjamin mingled with others, seemingly oblivious to my distress. After we returned home, feeling overwhelmed and hurt, I confronted him. I couldn't comprehend how he could allow me to endure such cruelty. Benjamin appeared unaware of his mother's incessant jabs, which had turned the night into a humiliating spectacle at my expense. I pointed out how he had consistently avoided me, leaving me isolated when I needed his support the most. He claimed it wasn't intentional, that he was merely caught up with other guests whenever I approached, but his words offered little comfort. The argument intensified as I confronted Benjamin about his failure to defend me against his mother's harshness. He argued that challenging her could lead to severe repercussions for him, but I countered by emphasizing his independence and resilience. In the heat of our exchange, Benjamin admitted to his shortcomings, apologizing for both the events of the evening and his prior insensitivity. He acknowledged my right to be upset and promised to confront his mother about her behavior, admitting he had been cowardly in handling the situation. Hearing this acknowledgement was a turning point for me. It was a relief to have him validate my feelings and commit to standing by my side. True to his word, Benjamin spoke with Margaret the very next day, initiating a long overdue change. It was a crucial step in repairing the rift her behavior had caused between us and marked a moment of growth for him, demonstrating his willingness to confront difficult situations for the sake of our relationship. Until that moment, Benjamin had never confronted his mother about her treatment of me, so I was taken aback when he finally did. Margaret was shocked by his newfound assertiveness, as she had grown accustomed to his silence. To Benjamin's surprise, she apologized and promised to change her behavior toward me. This unexpected development gave me hope for a warmer welcome at the next dinner party. However, my optimism was short-lived and Margaret told Benjamin there wouldn't be enough food for me to attend. I saw right through this excuse. It was clearly her way of excluding me without being openly hostile. With her previous means of amusement at my expense no longer available, Benjamin chose to believe his mother's excuse was genuine and decided to attend alone. This pattern of exclusion persisted, with Margaret inventing new reasons to keep me away from family gatherings. At first, this hurt me deeply, but I soon found solace in the distance it created between Margaret and me. It reduced the humiliations I had to endure, which in turn lessened the conflicts between Benjamin and me, as there was no longer a need for him to defend me in my absence. As time passed, I began to appreciate the peace and happiness that came from having fewer interactions with Margaret. This new dynamic significantly alleviated the stress in our relationship, allowing me to become more accepting of the situation, especially since it seemed to benefit us overall. After 4 years of dating, as both of our careers flourished, Benjamin proposed. Despite the challenges we had faced, I was thrilled. I believed in our resilience and our capacity to overcome obstacles together. Everyone in our circles celebrated our engagement, everyone except Margaret. Her disdain was evident when she questioned Benjamin's decision to marry me, implying that I was beneath him. However, Benjamin stood firm, defending our love and emphasizing its non-materialistic value. I brought happiness and comfort to Benjamin's life, which he argued could not be quantified in monetary terms. Despite Margaret's harsh critiques, accusing me of planning to live off Benjamin, he continued to stand by me, demanding that his mother respect our relationship and acknowledging the contributions I made to his life. This insistence on respect marked a pivotal moment for us, demonstrating Benjamin's commitment to our relationship and highlighting our growing ability to navigate challenges together, including Margaret's reluctance to accept me. From the start, I made it clear to Margaret that my love for Benjamin was genuine and not tied to his wealth. Yet, she challenged my intentions, suggesting I prove my disinterest in his finances by signing a prenuptial agreement. Benjamin refused, arguing that such a move implied a lack of trust in both me and our relationship. Margaret retaliated by threatening to disinherit him unless he complied. Faced with this ultimatum, we had 5 days to decide. I reassured Benjamin of my willingness to sign the agreement, emphasizing that my commitment was to him, not his wealth. When we arrived at Margaret's to sign the prenup, Benjamin wore an expression of remorse, while Margaret exuded a triumphant confidence, convinced she had undermined our relationship. However, signing the document was my way of demonstrating that financial matters held no power over my love for Benjamin. With the prenup finalized, we hastened our wedding plans to prevent Margaret from further sabotaging our happiness. We organized the wedding in 5 months, taking precautions to ensure security was tight to avoid any potential disruptions. Our wedding day was magical, overflowing with emotion and joy as we exchanged vows. The celebration was vibrant, surrounded by friends and family. Yet, Margaret couldn't resist attempting to shift the spotlight back to herself. During her toast, she tried to belittle me and forecast the demise of our marriage, claiming that Benjamin would eventually seek a partner who could elevate his status. Her words stirred unease among the guests, prompting me to quietly suggest to Benjamin that we might need security. This wasn't about retaliating against Margaret but about protecting the sanctity and joy of our special day. After the wedding incident, which resulted in Margaret being escorted out by security, I hoped to move past her hurtful words and enjoy my new life with Benjamin. Unfortunately, her remarks lingered, casting a shadow over our marriage. The day after our wedding, we visited Margaret to address her actions. Despite our intentions for a peaceful conversation, she was defensive, accusing me of manipulating Benjamin. She refused to acknowledge her hurtful behavior, doubling down on her accusations against me. In that moment, I finally stood up for myself, challenging her baseless claims. However, this only upset Benjamin, who saw my assertiveness as disrespect toward his mother. Despite years of enduring her disparaging remarks, my defense seemed to cross a line for him. I apologized to Benjamin, but this incident set a precedent for how we would handle future confrontations with Margaret. Empowered by my assertion, I found myself less willing to hold back when she attempted to belittle me. This shift often led to tense moments, with both Margaret and Benjamin criticizing me for causing discomfort. I argued that if Margaret wanted to avoid public embarrassment, she should refrain from trying to humiliate me. Benjamin, particularly displeased with my newfound assertiveness, frequently urged me to back down. Yet, I felt no reason to yield as long as Margaret continued her behavior. This standoff between my self-respect and Margaret's provocations became a recurring theme in our marriage, highlighting a significant challenge we would need to navigate together. Over time, I noticed a change in Benjamin's demeanor. He began to pull away, his once warm and affectionate nature cooling noticeably. This change seemed abrupt, and I couldn't pinpoint its cause, especially since he appeared to agree with my stance during private discussions. Then one day, coming home early from work, I spotted Margaret's car in our driveway and braced myself for another unpleasant encounter. What I walked into, however, was far from what I expected. I overheard a conversation between Margaret and Benjamin that froze me in my tracks. She was urging him to end our marriage, painting me as disrespectful and manipulative. She insinuated that I had wedged myself between them, claiming that if he weren't married to me, he would naturally side with her. Margaret portrayed me as a gold digger, suggesting my entitlement stemmed from a desire for Benjamin's wealth. although Benjamin admitted to lavishing me with gifts without expecting much in return. Hearing their words left me stunned. Was he really swayed by such baseless claims? I made my presence known by deliberately closing the door with a loud thud, halting their conversation abruptly. The realization that Benjamin was so easily swayed by his mother's manipulative narrative hit me hard. Instead of confronting them head-on, I chose a different tactic, allowing my actions in the days to come to speak volumes. As I walked past Benjamin and Margaret toward the bedroom, I caught another cutting remark from her about my supposed disrespect. Benjamin's only response was a resigned sigh. Inside the room, I braced myself for an emotional breakdown but was instead overwhelmed by fatigue. The relentless efforts by Margaret to push me away and Benjamin's dwindling support had drained me. Surprisingly, a part of me felt relief at the thought of our marriage ending, yet I was determined not to leave quietly. The following day, I gathered my financial documents, planning to reveal them after signing the divorce papers, wanting to prove my independence and dispel their assumptions about my motives. When Benjamin presented the divorce papers later that week, their frustration was palpable at my calm demeanor, but I proceeded to sign without hesitation. I was determined to strip them of any satisfaction they hoped to derive from the situation. However, Margaret's smugness quickly resurfaced and their lawyer promptly left with the signed documents. She taunted me, insinuating that I would miss the financial perks of being Benjamin's wife. To her surprise, I expressed my happiness at being free from their toxicity. Her insult, calling me a snob, and Benjamin's defense, accusing me of acting out because they had seen through me, only underscored their misunderstanding. They seemed oblivious to the fact that I had never been after Benjamin's money. I sought love and partnership, not wealth. Amidst their complaints about my failure to reciprocate Benjamin's gestures with even minor gifts, I had been secretly planning a grand surprise. I intended to buy him his dream car, fully customized to his liking. Such a gift required time, which they dismissed as mere fantasy. Skeptically, Margaret accused me of lacking the means, prompting me to prove her wrong with my bank statements. The revelation of my financial capability left them stunned, challenging their preconceived notions about me. Despite my attempts to convey that money had never been my interest, my words fell on deaf ears. Margaret labeled me inferior, and Benjamin viewed my independence as disrespectful. In the heat of their realization, they tried to re-engage me in conversation, hurling insults and disbelief at my newfound strength. Benjamin was visibly angered and felt betrayed, while surprisingly, Margaret softened, pleading for reconciliation, admitting her mistakes, and asking for forgiveness. However, the damage was irreparable. I firmly demanded that they remove themselves from my life, a sentiment I emphasized by having friends retrieve my belongings from Benjamin's house, effectively severing all ties with them. They even attempted to contest the divorce, falsely claiming that I had taken from them, but the airtight prenup that Margaret insisted on signing protected me from any financial claims they might have had. Now, I find myself on a path to normalcy, gradually healing from the wounds inflicted by Margaret and Benjamin's actions. It's a slow journey, but I'm confident that with time, I'll move beyond the turmoil and find peace. Thank you for being here to listen to my story. Hello everyone, I'm Jessica, and I want to share the challenges I've faced with my stepmother, Carol. I refer to her by her name because she has never acted in a motherly capacity, nor has she shown any desire to do so. From the moment my father, Frank, introduced us, Carol made her feelings unmistakably clear. Away from Dad, she bluntly told me, "Don't get any ideas about me being your mom. You're just my husband's daughter, and that's it. You're old enough to take care of yourself, so don't expect me to go out of my way for you." I tried to keep the peace, replying, "That's fine, Carol, I'm quite self-sufficient. I just want Dad to be happy. I promise I won't be a problem for you." But to Carol, I was an obstacle. She retorted, "You're already causing trouble. Don't think you can outsmart me. I've dealt with teenagers before, and once you turn 20, I'll make sure you're out of our lives for good. Then I'll have Frank all to myself." Her hostility didn't stop there. Carol even insulted my late mother, which cut deep. My mom passed away when I was only 10, and it took my dad a long time to open his heart again. Because of this, I hesitated to tell Dad about Carol's cruel remarks, a choice I now regret. After marrying my dad, Carol's behavior took a turn for the worse. She openly expressed her dislike for children and her desire to distance me from our family, something she had conveniently left out before their wedding. When Dad supported me, Carol resorted to sabotage. ruining her meals and blaming me. She would complain to Dad, saying, "Look at what your daughter has done. She's ruined my cooking. I won't cook for her. And next, she'll probably poison me." Caught in the middle, Dad would ask for my side, and I'd respond honestly, "I have no idea what she's talking about. Dad, I'm happy to prepare my meals. I wasn't even home earlier. I got takeout to eat in my room." This left me feeling trapped in a relentless cycle of accusations, longing for peace and unity in our family. Let me be clear, if things don't change, I genuinely fear for my safety due to Carol's actions. For the 3 years she's been in my life, she has done unimaginable things, starting with petty acts like oversalting her food to frame me. While this might seem trivial, it was only the beginning. Thankfully, my dad eventually came to believe my side of the story, thanks to the overwhelming evidence I had gathered. Carol's antics escalated to cutting off my phone service, locking me out of the house for hours, hiding my car keys on important exam days, and even throwing away a project I spent a week completing. Despite my dad's attempts to address these issues, Carol's behavior remained unchanged. She would only pretend to improve temporarily before reverting to her harmful ways. After enduring a year of this, I decided to take control of my life. I got a job and started paying for my essentials, aiming to minimize Carol's influence. While my dad was saddened by this decision, I assured him that being financially independent was the best path for me. Carol, who viewed my dad's finances as her own, disapproved of any spending on me, pushing me to keep a low profile to avoid her wrath. Yet she continued to make my life miserable, steadfast in her vow to drive me out of the house and out of her life. Little did she know, fate had a twist in store for both of us. The real chaos erupted just weeks after my 20th birthday. Carol seemed uncharacteristically cheerful, likely believing I would soon be out of her hair. However, I was one step ahead, having overheard her plotting with a friend about how to force me out. So, when I returned from work to find my belongings packed, instead of feeling defeated, I was intrigued. I confronted her calmly, feigning curiosity. "Hey Carol, why are my things packed? Are we going on a trip?" Her attempt to unsettle me backfired. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me distressed. My question, tinged with sarcasm, was a clear signal that I was aware of her plan and that I wasn't as vulnerable as she had hoped. Carol smugly reminded me of her vow to evict me the moment I turned 20. "Remember, I told you I'd kick you out once you were an adult? Well, the time has come for you to leave. Out of the goodness of my heart, I've packed your things to make your exit easier," she declared, believing she was doing me a favor. "Oh, so you're trying to kick me out of my own home?" I replied, my tone calm yet firm. "This isn't just any house, Carol, this is my house, and you have no right to force me out. We'll see what Frank has to say about this." Carol's smirk widened, revealing her confidence. She was already fantasizing about repurposing my room, but I had a surprise that would turn the tables entirely. With a calm demeanor, I reached into my bag and pulled out some documents, handing them over to her. The puzzled look on Carol's face brought a smirk to my lips. "I think today is the perfect day for you to take a good look at these papers, Carol, especially given your plans to evict me." As she began reading, her confusion turned to shock, and by the time she looked up, her face was flushed with anger. "Is this an eviction notice for me? What on earth, Jessica? What do these papers mean?" "They mean, Carol, that you have to leave this house within a month. That's the standard implication of an eviction notice," I replied calmly. Fuming, she shot back, "You can't serve me eviction papers. This is my home. I decide who stays and who goes." "Actually, Carol, this has always been my home. My father was merely managing it on my behalf until I came of age. Now that I'm 20, the property legally belongs to me. I've just completed all the necessary legal formalities," I explained, watching her disbelief deepen. "That's impossible. Frank can't just hand over the house to you. It's a marital asset, and he can't transfer it without my consent." Panic was evident in her voice. "Carol, this house has been mine long before you came into the picture. It belonged to my maternal grandparents, who left it to me, with my father serving as the custodian until I turned 20. It seems you weren't aware of this little detail," I said, relishing the dawning realization on her face. In a fit of denial, Carol spluttered, "You're lying. This can't be happening. You're trying to scam me out of my home. Just wait until Frank hears about this." But the truth was undeniable. The house was legally mine, and her schemes had finally caught up with her. Karma, as they say, had come knocking. In a moment of sheer folly, Carol decided to bring my father into the fray, completely neglecting the crucial step of consulting him about her plan to evict me. It's common courtesy to discuss such matters, especially when it involves family, but Carol, perhaps knowing all too well what his response would be, chose to skip this discussion and barreled ahead with her eviction scheme. Her oversight delighted me. It brought Dad directly into the situation, which only worked to my advantage. Dad came downstairs, drawn by the commotion, and his presence immediately began to calm the storm. "What's all the shouting about, Carol? What's going on?" he asked, a mix of confusion and concern in his voice. Carol didn't hold back, launching into accusations about my outrageous claims of ownership and her supposed eviction. As expected, Dad turned to me for clarity. He had always been fair, a quality that irked Carol, who preferred his unwavering support, no matter the circumstances. Their disagreements on this issue were frequent, yet Dad remained impartial, seeking to understand both sides of any story. I took a deep breath and explained. Carol confronted me, claiming she was kicking me out and insisting that this was her house and I had no place here. I overheard her plotting to do this on the phone. In a bold move, I served Carol an eviction notice, and Dad's reaction was immediate and visible. "Carol, who gave you the authority to decide on evicting Jessica? We never discussed this. Why am I only hearing about it now?" His disappointment was palpable, revealing a deep breach of trust. Caught off guard by both the eviction notice and Dad's sudden interrogation, Carol momentarily panicked before slipping into her familiar defensive posture. "Jessica's an adult now, Frank. She's been living here rent-free since turning 20. It's normal for parents to encourage their children to become independent at this age. We're just trying to teach her responsibility." But Dad wasn't swayed. "That decision is mine to make, not yours. You should have discussed it with me first." His words emphasized his commitment to fairness and mutual respect, qualities Carol had consistently disregarded. He firmly reminded her that she had never taken on a parental role in my life, nor had she contributed anything toward my upbringing. "How could you assume you had the right to make decisions about Jessica's living situation? You've been entirely unfair," he asserted. Carol clung to the idea that as Dad's wife, she had equal rights to the house. "This is my home too, and Jessica has to leave," she insisted. But Dad countered her claims with the truth. The house was legally mine, not theirs. Carol's shock and disbelief were evident as she struggled to grasp that Dad supported my claim to the home she had believed she could control. Overwhelmed, she accused him of betrayal. "Why would you do this? You should have consulted me." Dad stood firm, pointing out her hypocrisy. "You had no problem trying to evict Jessica without discussing it with me first. This house has always been meant for her. I've only been managing it until she came of age." Carol's shock deepened as Dad offered to show her the legal documents, but she was too stunned to consider them seriously. Feeling deceived, she lashed out at Dad. "You lied to me. This isn't fair." Dad calmly clarified. "I never lied. You made assumptions without asking. Remember our prenup? Our assets were meant to remain separate." Despite her accusations, painting me as the ungrateful one for wanting to evict them, I interjected. "I'm not evicting Dad, Carol. This situation is a direct result of your actions. I might have even considered letting you stay if you hadn't tried to force me out." This confrontation peeled back the layers of misunderstandings and unveiled hard truths, setting the stage for profound changes in our family dynamics. Deep down, I had always sensed that Carol wasn't the right fit for our family. That intuition had led me to insist on a prenuptial agreement before she married my dad, fearing she might jeopardize our future, especially with financial issues. It was my way of protecting us, showing my dad that I cared about him and our future. Above all, I wanted him to be happy, and if Carol wasn't contributing to that happiness, it might be healthier for them to part ways. I took the time to reassure my dad that he had been a fantastic parent, far from the villain Carol painted him to be. He had done so much for me, and I needed him to recognize his worth. I won't deny that I felt a sense of relief knowing my dad was considering ending things with Carol. After everything she had put us through, it was evident she wasn't the partner my dad needed or deserved. Our heartfelt conversation ended on a peaceful note, with my dad retreating to the guest room for the night, marking the beginning of a new chapter without Carol's chaos. I felt a newfound peace at the thought of her imminent departure, believing we had finally taught her a valuable lesson. But the next morning brought an unexpected twist. Carol was overcompensating, preparing breakfast and showering me with kindness. as if she had transformed overnight into the epitome of care and affection. Even Dad cast skeptical glances, puzzled by her sudden change in demeanor. Despite the awkwardness, I managed a polite "thank you" for the breakfast while questioning the sincerity of her actions. I made it clear that her efforts were unnecessary. "I've been taking care of myself for the last 5 years, Carol. We don't need to start pretending that things can change just like that." I expressed my skepticism about her sudden desire to bond over meals as a family, knowing we had already passed the point where such gestures could make a meaningful difference. Carol insisted on embracing her newfound role, determined to cultivate a close mother-daughter relationship, a notion that felt forced and unrealistic. Given our tumultuous history, it was clear she had spent the night scheming, desperately trying to find a way to salvage her position in our family. However, having witnessed her past behavior and observing my dad barely concealing his amusement at her antics, I remained unconvinced. "Carol, let's get one thing straight, I'm 20 now. The time when I might have needed another parental figure has long passed. I'm fully self-sufficient. Furthermore, the idea of you as a mother doesn't align with reality, so I'm not interested in whatever plan you've concocted," I stated firmly. In an attempt to sway me, Carol appealed to my sense of forgiveness, suggesting we overlook her past mistreatment for the sake of building a happy family, ostensibly to strengthen her marriage with my dad. But it was glaringly evident that her motivations were more about securing her own place in the house than any genuine familial concern. "I'm not sure what marriage you're trying to fortify, especially with its impending end. Trying to stay in this house under false pretenses won't work, Carol. I've made my decision," I concluded, reiterating my stance. Her actions had made it clear that it was time for her to go, and no last-minute change of heart could alter our path. My dad had already made his intentions clear. The divorce was unavoidable due to the irreparable harm Carol had inflicted. Her last-ditch effort to play the victim fell flat, particularly given the prenup she had signed, which left her with no financial leverage. With no options left, Carol resorted to tears, pleading with both me and my dad for forgiveness and another chance. That day tested our patience as we endured her incessant cries for mercy. Eventually, Dad stepped out to consult with his lawyer, initiating the divorce process. Within a week, Carol was officially served divorce papers, marking the end of her bargaining. We explained to Carol that it was time for her to find her own footing, suggesting she seek employment and legal representation for the divorce. Despite her initial hopes of changing our minds, her time in our home came to an end. As agreed, she resisted leaving, but the threat of further legal action finally prompted her to pack her things, tears streaming down her face as she prepared to stay with a friend, having alienated herself from her own family due to her actions. With Carol's departure, a wave of peace washed over our home, restoring it to the warm and welcoming place it had once been. 3 years have passed since that pivotal moment. I'm now in college, close enough to maintain a strong bond with my dad, who has since finalized the divorce. He has ventured back into the dating scene, not to remarry, but simply to enjoy the companionship of others. As for Carol, she has faced her own set of challenges. Last I heard, she was living in a shared apartment, struggling to make ends meet with a minimum wage job due to her limited skills. On a rare occasion, I spotted her from a distance at a grocery store, looking visibly aged and worn by her circumstances. It seemed karma had indeed caught up with her, serving as a harsh lesson about the repercussions of her actions and decisions. It was a dream come true for her, but as we began talking about the wedding, something shifted in her. Mia started offering very strong opinions on everything, whether it was the venue, the guest list, or even what I should wear. It felt like she wanted to control every detail, making it more about her vision than ours. William was caught in the middle, trying to keep both his mom and me happy, which only added to the stress. As the wedding planning continued, tensions between us grew. We started arguing about things that normally wouldn't be an issue, all because we were trying to balance our desires with Mia's expectations. I quickly realized that if we didn't address this, it could have long-term effects on our relationship. So, I suggested to William that we have a serious conversation to set our priorities straight and figure out how to handle Mia's involvement. We agreed that the wedding should reflect what we wanted, not just what Mia envisioned. While we valued her input, it was important to establish boundaries. Together, we decided to sit down with her and gently explain that while her involvement was appreciated, the final decisions had to come from us. It was crucial that we stayed true to ourselves as a couple on our special day. At first, I was thrilled. Mia embraced me with open arms, eager to get to know me better and help with the wedding. She stayed with us for a weekend to assist with the preparations and bond. I saw it as a great opportunity to grow closer, but things quickly changed. It started subtly. During breakfast on Saturday, while William was outside drinking coffee, Mia smiled and said, "You're not too concerned about carbs, are you?" I laughed it off, but her comment stung a little. Later, as we looked through wedding dress catalogs, she pointed to a dress, saying it was beautiful but only suited for a certain body type, hinting that it wasn't for me. I brushed it off, but I felt a growing sense of discomfort. The real blow came when we went shopping for wedding decorations. She casually mentioned how a friend's daughter had lost weight for her wedding and asked if I'd considered doing the same. I muttered something about being happy with my body, but it was clear what she was suggesting. The next day, she snooped through my kitchen cupboards and made a comment about all the snacks I had, advising me to eat healthier before the big day. Her focus on my weight became more pointed with each interaction. The comments were always wrapped in a friendly tone, but they felt more like subtle jabs. Interestingly, she only made these remarks when William wasn't around. Whenever he was present, she was all smiles and charm, but the moment he stepped out, the critiques resumed. It was like dealing with two different versions of Mia, one who accepted me and another who judged me constantly. I didn't want to cause any problems with William, especially since we were newly engaged and still in the honeymoon phase of our relationship. I convinced myself I could handle Mia's remarks. After all, I had always been confident in my body and worked hard to feel good about myself, but her comments were starting to get under my skin, and it was becoming harder to ignore them. Mia's visits increased as the wedding drew closer, and it became impossible to escape her presence. She always seemed to have an opinion about something, making it hard to focus on the plans without her hovering. It was exhausting trying to maintain my patience while balancing her advice with my own vision for the wedding. One weekend, she called to say she'd be coming over again. Dread filled me. I needed time to myself to focus on the wedding without her constant input. Hoping to avoid her, I mentioned I was going dress shopping that weekend, thinking that would give me some space. But instead, she insisted on coming with me. Caught off guard, I couldn't refuse without appearing rude, so I reluctantly agreed. As we visited bridal shops, Mia took on a motherly role, picking out dresses I didn't care for and critiquing the ones I liked. When I tried on a gown that I felt beautiful in, she remarked that it was nice but too tight around the waist, suggesting something more flattering. Her words deflated me, and by the end of the day, I hadn't picked a dress. I felt defeated. Once Mia left, I finally felt some relief from her constant critique, but she soon followed up with texts asking when we'd go dress shopping again. I avoided answering her, determined to shop alone next time. Unfortunately, William accidentally mentioned my plans, and Mia quickly called to ask when she could join me again. Faced with the thought of another stressful day with her, I quickly came up with an excuse, telling Mia that the bridal shop had a strict policy of allowing only 3 guests, and that my mother and maid of honor were already accompanying me. She immediately questioned the strange rule, catching me off guard. Flustered, I stuck to the story, even though I could feel how flimsy it sounded. I ended the call as quickly as I could, guilt settling in for lying to William's mom, but I knew I needed to prioritize my own peace of mind. Despite the guilt, I reminded myself that this day was supposed to be joyful and exciting. I resolved to focus on the positive aspects of the experience, finding the perfect dress and sharing the day with people who truly supported me. My mom and maid of honor arrived to pick me up, their energy lifting my spirits. Together, we headed to the bridal shop, and I allowed myself to fully embrace the excitement of the day. I pushed aside the lingering guilt and focused on enjoying the moment. It wasn't long before I found the perfect dress, one that felt like it was made just for me. Afterward, Mia's communication dwindled to nothing, no calls, texts, or visits, although she still spoke with William. This brought some relief, as it eased any potential tension between them. Feeling a burst of excitement, I sent her a photo of me in the dress, hoping to share my joy. Her response was a simple thumbs up emoji. Unsure of how to interpret it, I chose not to dwell on her reaction. As the wedding approached, I became consumed with last-minute preparations, leaving little time to think about Mia. My days were packed with tasks, finalizing the guest list, confirming vendors, and perfecting the decor. When the big day finally arrived, it felt magical. walking down the aisle toward William. I saw the love in his eyes, reassuring me that all the stress had been worth it. We exchanged vows and rings, and in that moment, we were officially married. The reception was like a dream. The venue looked stunning, the weather was perfect, and the food was delicious. Our first dance, polished through weeks of lessons, felt like a scene from a fairy tale. Everything was going smoothly until I went to the bar for a drink and saw Mia standing there. She offered me a Shirley Temple with a bright smile, perhaps attempting to ease the tension between us. I accepted, grateful for the gesture, and took a sip. Minutes later, I began to feel oddly drowsy. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion from the excitement of the day, but then I suddenly collapsed, losing consciousness. Chaos erupted as William rushed to my side, shouting for an ambulance. I could barely make out the voices around me as my vision blurred. When the EMTs arrived, they revived me and began asking what I had consumed. I mentioned everything, including the Shirley Temple Mia had given me. The EMT's concern grew as they asked about any medications I was taking. My maid of honor, Jasmine, quickly stepped in and mentioned my anxiety medication, which could dangerously interact with alcohol. Suddenly, Mia stepped forward, visibly distressed. She admitted that the drink she had given me contained alcohol, thinking it would help me relax without realizing the potential harm. I was shocked. Why would she spike my drink without telling me? The situation grew more intense when the EMTs confirmed that the combination of my medication and alcohol had caused my collapse. I was fortunate the reaction hadn't been worse, though I was relieved to be okay. The trust one had placed in Mia was shattered. William, who had been silently fuming, finally exploded. He confronted his mother, his voice trembling with anger as he demanded she leave the reception immediately. Mia looked stunned, trying to explain that it had been a misunderstanding, but William refused to listen. I had never seen him so upset, and it hurt to watch him have to confront his mother in the midst of what should have been a joyous day. The atmosphere of the reception shifted drastically. Guests began to sense the tension, and the celebratory mood evaporated. People quietly started leaving, and soon the reception came to an early end. What I had hoped would be the happiest day of my life was now overshadowed by Mia's reckless decision. Later that night, William and I returned to our hotel room, emotionally drained. The weight of the day's events was heavy, and a deep sadness crept in. What should have been a perfect day had been marred by something entirely avoidable. In the days that followed, Mia tried to reach out to both of us, but neither William nor I were ready to speak to her. William, torn between his love for his mother and his sense of betrayal, struggled to process his emotions. Returning home after the wedding, I made an effort to focus on starting this new chapter with William, but the memories of that day lingered. There was a constant undercurrent of what ifs. What if Mia hadn't meddled with the drink? What if the reception hadn't ended the way it did? Fortunately, our honeymoon provided some much-needed relief. For those 5 weeks, we were able to escape the drama and simply enjoy being together. It was a blissful reprieve, and for a while, life felt wonderfully normal again. But reality hit hard when we returned home. As we pulled into the driveway, there she was, Mia, standing at our doorstep. My heart sank, and a familiar knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I had known this confrontation was inevitable, but I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Worse still, Mia didn't start with an apology. Instead, she immediately launched into defending her actions, insisting that it had all been a harmless prank. She downplayed the severity of what had happened, making it clear she didn't grasp the gravity of her mistake. Her refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of her actions was exasperating. She brushed off the whole ordeal like it was no big deal, and William had finally had enough. He confronted her with a firmness I hadn't seen before, making it clear that she had crossed a line. He told her that the only way forward was for her to take full responsibility for what she had done and offer a genuine apology. Until then, he said, their relationship would be limited to holiday gatherings, like distant relatives who only see each other a few times a year. Mia was shocked by his stance and burst into tears, but William remained resolute. I could see how much it hurt him to set these boundaries with his own mother, but he stood by me, making sure I felt safe and respected. Things escalated unexpectedly a few weeks later when Mia showed up outside my office, surprised and anxious about causing a scene at work. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe nearby. She looked visibly distressed, and as soon as we sat down, she broke down in tears, drawing the attention of nearby customers. Mia expressed disbelief at William's firm stance, saying he hadn't answered her calls or texts. She begged me to intervene, hoping I could help restore their relationship. Yet, even in her emotional state, she hadn't apologized for her actions at the wedding. It was as if she refused to accept that she had done anything wrong. I calmly told her that instead of showing up unannounced or creating a scene, she should take some time to reflect on how her actions had affected both me and William. I reminded her that she had ruined what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, and it wasn't fair to expect me to simply move past that without an apology. Mia attempted to defend herself, saying she hadn't meant any harm and was sorry for how I had taken things, but it was clear she still didn't grasp the full impact of her behavior. As her tears continued, and more eyes in the cafe turned toward us, I felt increasingly uncomfortable. I told her I would talk to William but made no promises about whether I could help mend their relationship. As I left the cafe, I was torn. Part of me wanted to forgive her, but the apology felt forced, like something she only said because she had to. My mother advised me to forgive and move forward, but I wasn't sure I could just let it go so easily. What do you all think I should do? Should I forgive her and try to fix things, or am I right to be hesitant? I recently celebrated my 16th birthday, and it was a moment to remember. Thanks to an incredible gift from my grandmother, she transferred ownership of her penthouse apartment to me. This luxurious apartment sits in the heart of the city, a place my grandmother occasionally visits while primarily living in the suburbs. Receiving this gift felt like a ray of sunshine in what has been a difficult year and a half. To give you some background, my life took a sharp turn when my father, who had always prioritized his career over our family, abruptly left us. He moved out without warning and broke the news to me through a text message, simply telling me to behave. This message came after he and my mother had already filed for divorce, something they revealed only around the time of his departure. My father never fully explained his reasons for leaving, citing overwhelming circumstances instead. Consequently, my brother and I were left in our mother's custody after a swift legal separation facilitated by our state's laws. As I was still grappling with these sudden changes, my mother dropped another bombshell. She had been dating a man named William for a few months and was now engaged to him. This news was a lot to digest, especially since William would soon be my stepfather. Our initial meetings were strained. He seemed distant and uninterested in forming a connection with me, even though he was playful and engaging with my younger brother. The situation became even more complicated when my mother announced that William had accepted a promising job offer out of state. They planned to move soon, and my mother wanted to take my brother with them, leaving me to stay with my grandmother. Despite my eagerness to join them and keep our family together, my mother insisted it was best for me to remain behind due to my established life, school, and friends. However, the truth soon surfaced. William expressed his belief that my hesitance and our weak bond meant I wouldn't fit well into their new family dynamic. This revelation stung deeply, especially coming from my mother, who I had always believed would support me unconditionally. Ultimately, I found myself in the penthouse, a sanctuary gifted by my grandmother, a space of my own amidst the chaos of family upheaval. This experience has been a bittersweet mix of feeling abandoned by my mother while being profoundly grateful for my grandmother's unwavering support during these turbulent times. After a heart-to-heart with my mother about her plans to move away with William, I realized I couldn't just wait for their departure. I made the decision to move in with my grandmother right away. Although it took a few days to organize the move, my mother tried to reassure me of her love, claiming her choices were about pursuing her own happiness. However, the tension between us escalated, and in my final days at home, we hardly spoke. When it came time to leave, I didn't say goodbye to her. It felt unnecessary and too painful. The only farewell that felt right was to my little brother, whose absence I knew I would feel deeply. Living with my grandmother has brought me the stability and compassion I desperately needed. Unlike my paternal grandparents, with whom we've had little contact, my grandmother has always been nurturing. Life with her has been filled with care and support, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil I experienced with my family. My school commutes may be longer, but that seems a small price to pay for the peace and love I now enjoy. Though I maintain contact with my mother to check in on my little brother, I avoid direct conversations with her. This arrangement held until my recent birthday, which my grandmother transformed into a surprise celebration. She invited my closest friends and some relatives, all organized through social media. The highlight of the day was when my grandmother revealed her gift to me, the penthouse apartment. She explained that her lawyer would manage the property until I turned 18, at which point it would be entirely mine. This news shone like a beacon of hope amid the emotional storms I've weathered this past year. However, news of this generous gift somehow reached my mother, leading to an unexpected and unwelcome proposition. She and William suggested that he adopt me on the condition that I convince my grandmother to transfer the penthouse ownership to him. This proposal felt like a betrayal rather than a blessing, and I flatly refused, telling my mother that I didn't want any further communication. She attempted to reach out again, but I ignored her calls and texts. Eventually, she sent a message explaining her situation, detailing how William had provided financial and emotional support after my father left. She painted a picture of the difficulties she faced with minimal financial help from my father, a stark contrast to the lifestyle we once enjoyed. Despite her attempts to justify her actions, her words only deepened the rift between us as I struggled to reconcile her pursuit of happiness with the consequences for our family. While I could understand her reliance on William's support, it didn't mitigate the gap her choices had created in our relationship. She acknowledged that William hadn't been very warm towards me, attributing his distant behavior to challenges he faced in previous relationships with children, which had led to significant problems and breakups. She insisted it was crucial to consider his past traumas as well. My mother reassured me that leaving me with my grandmother wasn't abandonment. Rather, she believed I would be well cared for, and that it was her way of pursuing her own happiness while ensuring I wasn't left alone. Now, with a new arrangement that supposedly allowed me to join them, she was eager for me to accept the offer and align with William's expectations so we could be a family again. She mentioned how much my brother missed me, hinting that my return could help mend our relationships. However, her message, laden with expectations for me to accommodate William's wishes just as she had, unsettled me deeply. It felt as if she were asking me to compromise my integrity for the sake of her new life. Despite her gentle tone, the underlying manipulation left a sour taste in my mouth. After taking some time to think, I responded firmly, making it clear that I would not bend to William's demands. I told her to proceed with her plans to move without me. When I discussed my stance with my grandmother, she firmly refused to transfer the penthouse to William, expressing distrust of his intentions and a desire to protect our family asset. The following morning, my mother unexpectedly showed up at my grandmother's place. I was at school at the time, but my grandmother filled me in as soon as I returned home. My mother had come to discuss the property transfer proposal, which I had already decisively rejected. I reiterated my refusal, confused as to why she hadn't understood my initial rejection during our last conversation. I was direct and possibly harsh, but given the circumstances, my frustration felt warranted. She broke down, claiming her intentions were all about making everyone happy, but I countered that it seemed more like she was focused on pleasing herself while expecting everyone else to conform to her wishes. I stood firm, expressing that I had my own life to consider and wouldn't jeopardize it just to appease her. She left abruptly, and later I discovered she had blocked me. This action made me reflect on our exchange. While I felt some guilt over my bluntness, the situation exposed long-standing issues that perhaps needed to be addressed. I realized I hadn't fully grasped the timing and depth of my mother's relationship with William, which may have begun even before the divorce. This revelation complicated my understanding of the situation. I had never considered the possibility of my mother being unfaithful, as it seemed so out of character for her. However, recent discussions and speculations had me questioning everything. Even though I'm hesitant to dive into those suspicions, it's especially difficult because the split means I can no longer talk to my little brother as I once did, and I miss him terribly. We've always been close, and now unsettling theories about his paternity are floating around, only adding to the confusion and hurt. In the past few days, my grandmother and I have tried to make sense of it all, but instead of clarity, it has led to more questions and a shifting perception of my mother. I've considered reaching out to my father for more clarity, although I'm uncertain if he'd be willing to discuss such sensitive topics. It's now been 4 days since my mother last tried to contact us, and she's gone as far as to block both me and my grandmother. Despite everything, my grandmother has remained my rock, offering support out of love without any financial demands from my mother. Her selflessness during her retirement years is something I deeply appreciate, even if it seems lost on my mother. Then, unexpectedly, my father visited. My grandmother had reached out to him but kept it from me to manage my expectations. His arrival took me by surprise, and it was even more shocking when he embraced me and apologized for everything. He sat us down and opened up about the deterioration of his marriage with my mother, which had begun long before their official separation. He confessed to having an affair with a coworker 4 years ago, which my mother discovered about a year ago. This revelation led to their divorce, during which my mother demanded silence about the affair in exchange for the house, full custody, and a generous financial settlement. Desperate to keep his actions under wraps and avoid losing my respect, my father agreed. He apologized for his past mistakes, especially for being overly focused on work and not being present for me. This conversation illuminated the complex family dynamics and the pressures that led to decisions made at the cost of our family's unity. With these revelations now on the table, I'm left to process this new information and what it means for my relationships with both of my parents. In his defense, my dad explained that the pressure to maintain the upscale lifestyle my mother desired pushed him to work tirelessly. He clarified that while he wasn't justifying his actions, he wanted me to understand it wasn't entirely his fault. He also shared the real reason for breaking his promise and visiting me without my mother's consent. My grandmother had left him a message mentioning William, asking if he knew him. Concerned, my dad rushed over, as he not only knew William but also had reservations about his character from their shared college days. When my parents were together in college, William had harbored feelings for my mom. At a gathering the night before their graduation, William drunkenly confessed his feelings to her, but she rejected him since she was with my dad. She kept this encounter from my father for 3 weeks before finally confessing, which led to a 5-month break where she briefly dated William. That relationship fizzled out, and she eventually returned to my dad. Upon reconciling, my dad asked my mom to cut off contact with William due to his discomfort. She initially agreed but later ignored his request, which caused significant strife and nearly ended their marriage. My dad recounted a particularly intense argument when William showed up at their apartment, leading to a physical altercation between the two. William had thought it would impress my mom, but it backfired, pushing her to sever ties with him for good. According to my dad, after college, William left town and disappeared from their lives for years. However, my dad suspected my mom reconnected with him after hearing rumors of his return to the city. He wasn't sure when she started talking to William again, but their current engagement suggested a deeper involvement, raising questions about her fidelity during their marriage. This revelation threw into doubt all the conditions she set during their divorce. My dad expressed his intention to confront my mother, but he promised to wait until I had spoken with her to uncover the full story. With all this new information swirling in my head, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unsure of whom to trust, as both my parents had let me down in different ways. Eventually, I decided it was time to confront my mom. Since she had blocked me, I had no choice but to show up unannounced. When she saw me, she was taken aback but allowed me inside, thankfully without William home at the time. I started off by feigning an apology, hoping to lower her defenses for a more open conversation. I carefully approached the topic, expressing my difficulty in accepting William so soon into our family. Using it as a pretext to delve deeper, I hinted at my doubts regarding the timing of her meeting William right after her divorce, trying to nudge her into revealing their past connections from college. However, she didn't immediately confess anything, leaving me to press further for the truth. When I confronted my mom, she remarked on how lucky she felt to have found William so quickly after the divorce, evading any admission of their prior acquaintance. My dad had shown me photos from their college days, confirming they all knew each other back then. My mom's evasive and outright denial about knowing William before only solidified my trust in my dad's version of events. Things took a turn when she, perhaps realizing her initial response was too vague, finally admitted she had never intended to tell me about her past with William. She confessed that her rushed engagement and plans to move away were driven by a desire to erase every reminder of my father from her life. Then she revealed the affair, the very secret she had leveraged for a favorable divorce settlement, despite promising my dad she wouldn't tell me. At that moment, I felt there was no reason to continue the conversation. I left abruptly and called my dad to inform him that he could proceed as he saw fit because I now knew the truth. While I recognized that my dad wasn't entirely blameless in the past, my mom's actions had cast her in a much worse light. After our confrontation, my dad insisted on a paternity test, which confirmed he is indeed my father. He's now seeking full custody, and since I'm 16, my preference for him to have custody will be taken into account. However, I am still living with my grandmother, while my dad and I are trying to mend our relationship. Many issues remain unresolved, and I feel most stable with my grandmother for now. My mother was furious when she realized my visit had been aimed at uncovering her secrets. She unblocked me long enough to express her anger before blocking me again, and we haven't spoken since. As for William, he left my mother almost as quickly as he had proposed, especially after learning my dad was challenging the financial arrangements from their divorce. It turned out there was no real job offer for William. His plan had been to use my mother's finances to support his uncle's grocery store. This deception was also his motive for trying to persuade me to transfer my inherited property to him. Meanwhile, my mother, instead of reflecting on her actions, chose to vent to her friends, who, in turn, gossiped about the situation. That's how my dad and I learned more details about the mess. Thankfully, my dad and I are committed to improving our relationship. He has promised to be more present and involved in my life. We hope that once he gains custody, or at least shared custody of my brother, we can work toward being a happier, if not entirely functional, family.